This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with James O'Brien.
Minutes after 10 is the time. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Thank you. Good morning and welcome. There you go. I need a little catchphrase, don't I? Like David Frost used to. Hello, good evening and welcome. I need something similar. How about hello, good morning and welcome? There you go. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I'm going to ask quite a lot of you this hour. Sometimes when I am interviewed by or talking to people who aren't very familiar with this particular radio show, I used to be irritated, but now I'm just struck by how little they understand about the time that you and I spend together every morning. I think some people still think that it is the redoubt of immigrant-hating taxi drivers or conversations about hard shoulders on motorways and things like that. But obviously, we have been incredibly blessed in recent years with contributors, civilian contributors, people who ring me rather than people who we ring and invite onto the programme. Although, of course, we still do that. I've learned so much over the years, and the questions that I ask you have, I think, simultaneously become more highfalutin is a word perhaps that you might use, or more challenging. And I've got a really challenging question for you today. I'll tell you what it is now before we explore why we're asking it. And I want to clarify a couple of things. It's not a question about what you care about the most, because that's a really tricky question to answer. I'm very uncomfortable with the policing of compassion that goes on in the UK, in the UK media, in public discourse. The idea that you should be, because you've expressed concern about one issue, you automatically become a hypocrite when you fail to express concern about other issues. We've talked about the situation in Iran at the top of two shows already this week, and it's only Thursday, and yet you open the pages of the Daily Telegraph and they're pretending that people who are concerned about genocide in Gaza are somehow silent about the hideous treatment in Iran, which of course isn't sponsored or supported or excused by the British government or huge swathes of the British media. So that the obvious hypocrisy, the incredible disingenuousness is visible from space, and of course it seeps into discourse, and you fail sometimes to see where reality stops and propaganda begins. So I'm not asking what you care about the most. I'm not asking which dead children upset you more than other dead children, partly because I don't think you should be more upset by a dead child there than you are by a dead child there. You can be angrier about the one that is supported or excused by your neighbours, your government, your colleagues, than you are about the one that isn't. But you can't feel really more compassion unless you subscribe to some sort of hierarchy of humanity. But there are two or three things going on in my head at the moment. One is prompted by a rather good article by Timothy Garton-Ash in The Guardian today. Similarly, a piece by Daniel Finkelstein in The Times yesterday, specific to Iran, but focusing upon similar, or at least addressing similar themes. That is the idea about what the West actually is, and whether or not it is, in Timothy Garton-Ash's words, history. The West, as we have always understood it in the post-war period, in our entire lives, the West is dead. It doesn't exist. The world order in which America, for all its myriad flaws, failings, dishonesties and unjustified international interventions, stood for something different from might is right. It was not part of the world order that decided that if you were small, you were there for the taking. If you didn't have superpower status, then you should expect to be invaded by a superpower. United States of America defended the world, the West, from that equation, from that calculation. And under Donald Trump, it has done the polar opposite. It is now very much part, along with China and Russia, it's very much part of the world in which if you are big, you can do what you want. And there will be nobody there to help you. You think about why the sanctions that were introduced on Russia after their illegal invasion of Ukraine haven't had the effect that you might have hoped. And the answer is because countries like China, India and Turkey were quite happy to go on doing business as usual with Russia. So you can have a huge transatlantic West united in outrage at that invasion of Ukraine, but you've got big and middle powers who are not outraged enough to turn off the taps. So the economy survives unprecedented Western sanctions because the balance of power in the world has shifted, and those countries, the Chinas, the Indias, the Turkeys, they have enough wealth and enough power, as Garton Ash writes today, between them to counterbalance even a united West. And that was before Donald Trump got into the White House. So before Donald Trump got into the White House, the West was in many ways already in retreat. And Ukraine proved that. The fact that massive Western sanctions, and even a hugely successful refugee program, which spoke of unity, it spoke of the West moving as one, even feeling perhaps as one. And it didn't work. It didn't bring Putin to his knees because other countries were big enough and powerful enough to counterbalance Western policy. And that was before the president abandoned all semblance of decency or tradition or integrity or whatever you want to call it. Morality is probably the best word to use, but that can sound a little bit colonial. Stephen Miller, the absolute weirdo who seems to be Trump's closest advisor, has even said it out loud. The world is governed by strength, by force, by power. It's always the most inadequate men who subscribe to these schools of thought, isn't it? It's always the men who look as if they couldn't punch their way out of a wet paper bag. And look, I grant you, I'm no Adonis, but the intellectual insecurity, the physical, these dweebs that's the great lie of fascism, isn't it? Is that fascism may award you enormous status and power. You can cover your jacket in medals. You can give yourself all sorts of fancy titles. You can surround yourself by sycophants. You can prime the media. You can gut and fillet the media so that nobody ever says boo to you or tells you the truth. But inside you still feel like an inadequate loser, even as everybody's calling you Führer or everybody's calling you Lord and Master. You still feel like an inadequate loser. It's everybody else that suffers on the altar of your character defect. So that was before America essentially surrendered its role as a protector of liberal democracies, as a protector of a world in which might was not right. And then, of course, we've got Greenland and Donald Trump's growing determination to somehow annex it or co-opt it. So you now have European troops, you have troops from NATO countries going to Greenland in defense of possible action by the biggest member of NATO, the United States of America. That is insane. That is absolutely insane. NATO troops essentially being deployed in possible retaliation to NATO troops. That is, again, you forget that the new world order or the time on this planet that we've been alive is a tiny blink in the eye. It's a grain of sand on a beach, isn't it? But it still feels like the only world we've ever known. NATO troops being deployed in potential action against NATO troops. That's happening now. That's happening today as we speak. So you've got the illegal invasion of Ukraine and a United States president who struggles increasingly to hide the fact that he prefers Putin to Zelensky because might is right, Putin is bigger. You've got Greenland, where everything that we have held dear and sacred since the end of the Second World War is it's primed and ready to be set on fire. And then you've got Iran, which sponsors and exports hatred and terrorism, funds Hamas and Hezbollah. It's incredibly corrupt, kills its own citizens as if it were going out of fashion, acts in ways that are utterly and entirely repellent. Indefensible on a scale that is almost beyond articulation. But not immediately obvious beyond the sponsorship of terrorism, potential and actual, not immediately obvious as to what the West's interests, how the West's interests would be served by intervention. And that's why the words the West become relevant again, as they did at the beginning of this. And so this is the question that I would like you to answer. What is the biggest issue for the West? Ukraine, Greenland, or Iran? And of course, why? What is the biggest issue? And listen, I'm increasingly persuaded that some of the people, not all of them, but the people who, and I know this is a little bit ironic, a little bit pot kettle, a little bit physician heal thyself, but the people who are paid to have an opinion on every subject under the sun, I am absolutely persuaded now at the beginning of 2026 that a lot of the people who call this programme are better qualified on most subjects than those of us who are paid to have opinions on every subject under the sun. I don't know why we pay so much attention to some of these clowns, particularly since Brexit, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, austerity proved that almost all of them are idiots. They're either shills, client journalists, or idiots. If you were paying someone for the fruits of their judgment and insights and they'd come out in favour of Brexit, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, and even austerity, then in a sane universe, they would never be paid for their opinions again. But we live in the opposite of a sane universe in this country. So I'm asking you a big question. And I'm asking you because I don't know what the answer is. I've got my own opinions and theories. But what I want you to tell me is which of those three fronts, which of those three theatres, which of those three issues is the most important to the West. We are living through historical events, and that is not always the case. I always forget precisely what date it was, and I always tell you that I've forgotten precisely what date it was, that the BBC actually had a news bulletin that contained the words, "There is no news," and then they played a Chopin nocturne or something like that. I'll double check it for you again, because every time I tell you that, my brain tells me that I've either misremembered it or exaggerated it or got it wrong. And then I double check and I haven't misremembered it or got it wrong or made it up even. Obviously there would have been news that day, but we didn't have cameras and correspondents and people in all corners of the globe. But the idea of living through historical events, but having to wait for historians to work out the importance of moments is something I find enduringly fascinating, and I like to second guess it sometimes. I like to move a little earlier. Of those three issues, countries, problems, Ukraine, Greenland, Iran, which one is most significant to the West and to the post-war settlement and to peace, to history? Of those three, which one is the one that you think we should be treating most urgently, that we should be most concerned about? The Iranian regime, Putin's potential victory in Ukraine, or Donald Trump's potential annexation of Greenland? Which of those three things is the one that, if you could, you would direct the world's or the government's or the politicians' attention to first? Hit the numbers now, you will get through. I told you it was a tricky question, but I got great faith in your ability to answer it. 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. 17 minutes after 10 is the time. The 18th of April 1930 is the date that I was thinking of, the day upon which there was no news, according to the BBC's newsreader. So which of those three? Greenland, Ukraine, Iran, and tell me why. Because at the moment, if I had to put them in order, I think I would go Ukraine, Greenland, Iran, but there's a pretty strong case for, given that what might happen, Greenland knocking Ukraine off the top spot. Is there? I don't know. That's why it's an interesting question. That's why I can't wait to hear what you've got to say. That's why you need to dial 0345 6060 973 to tell me.
James O'Brien on LBC.
20 minutes after 10 is the time. I've already got texts, and I won't read them out yet. I'll go straight to the calls, citing all three of the options. So try to resist if you can. I sound all school teachery. Don't sort of include implicit or explicit criticism of anybody who thinks it's different from what you think. So obviously or clearly or not a tricky question at all. I don't know how helpful that is, to be honest. We're all being nice to each other today. It'll never last. But despite people thinking it's a no-brainer, in fact, people think Iran is the biggest problem facing the West, Greenland is the biggest problem facing the West, and Ukraine people thinking Ukraine is the biggest problem facing the West. I've got people in all three camps who think it's a no-brainer. You can't all be right, can you? Mark is in Kelm in Poland. Mark, what would you like to say?
Well, I'm just Ukraine for me right now would be number one. The reason being is I'm about to go to Kharkiv.
I'm gonna get that phone line slightly improved and come back to you imminently, I promise. Graham is in Macclesfield. Graham, have you recovered from the excitement of this weekend yet, or are you not a football fan?
I'm a football fan, yeah.
Flipping heck, mate! What was that about?
It was absolutely incredible. The atmosphere in this little market town in Cheshire is unbelievable.
I'm not surprised. And we nearly had our moment a few years ago when West Ham came to Kidderminster, and we were so close to doing what you did, but we didn't do it, and you did. So the laurels will be forever yours. Go up the Silkmen, up the Silkmen. Anyway, that's not what you rang in to talk about.
No, yeah. Coincidentally, actually, we were talking about this very subject on Tuesday with a group of friends. We have there's an organisation called U3A. You may know about this.
Yes, I do. The university. No, go on. Remind me.
It's called it's called University of the Third Age. Or
I thought so.
U3A.
Yes.
And it's basically I suppose it's a glee club for the over 60s.
Go on then. What did you glean from that you can share with the rest of us?
I actually run one of the groups within Macclesfield U3A with a colleague, and we run a politics group, and we were actually discussing this only yesterday, and the consensus was that it was Ukraine.
Yes,
because quite simply, the Americans' attitude. Sorry. The consensus was that it wasn't Ukraine, that the consensus was that it was Greenland.
Right.
Because whilst Ukraine is incredibly desperate, the whole situation, the Americans' attitude towards Greenland is a complete existential threat to the NATO alliance and to the post-war settlement and to peace and security in Europe and the world as a whole. And if the Americans pursue this, they will shatter the NATO alliance.
And I suppose you could mention Crimea to render the Ukraine situation precedented, and it is the unprecedented that is the most significant. And an annexation or having designs upon Greenland, upon sovereign European territory, that feels very unprecedented in the post-war period.
Yeah, it's incredibly disturbing because it's not even necessary. And it seems that it's being pursued for reasons other than those that President Trump has outlined, just according to the needs of the Golden Dome system. They're talking about.
It's all bogus, isn't it? And if he was worried about Vladimir Putin's ambitions and actions, then he would be putting everything on Ukraine to sort of remind why we have these 3 points on the triangle. So it is absurd. And I suppose also Russian aggression, Russian imperialism, Russian colonialism, Russian invasions are part of the post-war map of Europe. American imperialism in Europe is not.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Yeah, and the other thing is as well is that when you look at the two economies, American and Russian, the Russians are nowhere near. They've got an economy the size of Spain. They don't have the financial resources to do what the Americans can do.
Which is pretty much whatever they want, and they've always had the ability to do whatever they want. They've never had the desire to do it, and I mean, certainly not in Europe. Oddly, Graham, you highlight a trend. Greenland is currently ahead, and I'm not turning this into a sort of hit parade, but for reasons that Graham has just articulated, Greenland is currently ahead, not by much, from Ukraine, and I have got supporters or proposers of Iran as well, but Greenland is currently ahead. I thought it would be Ukraine. Jane speaks for Iran. Good morning, Jane. The biggest threat to Western democracy is currently Iran. They are the only current apparent ideology that wants to wipe us out. Therefore, Iran is the most significant. Capability would be part of that calculation as well, Jane, and I don't know that Vladimir Putin can be excused entirely from having desires upon territories far beyond the ones that he already occupies. Jerry goes for Greenland. Trump's annexation of Greenland must be the biggest priority. Where else would be next, either by Trump or anyone else, once the precedent has been set? But you could make the same argument about Ukraine. And as Alan says, clearly it's Ukraine. If we lose that one, we will lose our freedom. And I think a special mention to Dave, who has been in touch to say, oh, come on, James, I was going to ask this on Mystery Hour, which, of course, will be joining us. We will be joining at 12 o'clock today. You can't ask questions like this on Mystery Hour because you can't go definitive. But Dave knows that. Chris is in Amersham. Chris, what would you like to say?
Hello, yes. Hi, James.
Hello.
I think pretty much your previous caller, Graham, covered most of the points I was covering.
So you're Greenland, then?
100% Greenland.
Wow.
I think
I'm feeling sorry for Ukraine. I think we might be wrong, but I'm not going to argue with anyone yet. Carry on.
I think there is a particular distinction. With Russia, we've been at war with on and off for the last century, 2 centuries. You mentioned Crimea. We were in the Crimean War, obviously, in the 19th century.
Yes.
The one thing about the United States is that they have never attacked Europe. They've never gone to war in Europe without an invitation from European countries or their supporters. So there is not a single country in Europe that wants America to attack Greenland. And even among the far right, even among the nationalists in France, I don't think there's any public support in Europe anywhere really for Greenland to be invaded.
And that makes it more significant and a more urgent problem than, I mean, despite the fact that it is precedented, the Russian aggression, if it were to succeed, if it were to escalate, if Ukraine were to fall and the Balkans were next and Baltic states rather were next, then surely by that measure, Ukraine would be more important than Greenland.
Certainly, but I think if you're talking about a direct fissure, a direct crack in the Western alliance, you're talking about one side of the West against the other, without a third party that has varying degrees of support between the Americans and the Hungarians and the British attacking the Russians. So this
is key. Go on, sorry.
It strikes absolutely to the heart of the Western alliance, and I can't think of anything that. What you've done is highlight the difference between the United States quitting the stage, because I was going to bite back and say, well, what Western alliance? With Donald Trump in the White House, there is no Western alliance in the traditional sense, but there's a huge difference between the United States abnegating its responsibilities, quitting the stage, and the United States actually being on the stage, acting in the opposite direction from where it has been since 1945. Actually, as you say. And I think even just by the language used by Trump when they're talking about conquest, I mean, incredibly inflammatory language, and berating Denmark for sending 1 or 2 dog sledges over. I mean, the level of aggression in the negotiation is just off the scale, and I just think this is symptomatic of a president who has lost his mind and we'll do anything to keep it apart.
And that makes the business of analysis ever more difficult, but it also makes the business of reporting rather hard because it's so difficult to keep up with the volume, with the quantity, never mind the quality of contribution. For example, yesterday, Denmark and some of its European NATO allies announced the sending of further troops to Greenland. Why? Because they're worried about the United States. Greenland moving ahead. And I'm not, as I said, going to argue with anybody yet, but I feel perhaps the difference between the theoretical future and the present is key to understanding this, because the plight of the people of Ukraine is hideous. But then you bring Iran back into the conversation and talk about the plight of the people of Iran. So in terms of protecting the Western tradition or the Western status quo, it probably is Greenland, until you tell me otherwise, which I encourage you to do on 0345. There's one phone line free. You can grab the one that Chris has vacated, 0345 60600973. Dominic Ellis is here with your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 33 minutes after 10. Quick heads up for you. The Mayor of London, Sir Sadiq Khan, will join us tomorrow. If you want to get your question to him in early, then email Sadiq, SADIQ, at lbc.co.uk, including your question, your name and your phone number, so that we can contact you if you want to put that question directly to the Mayor yourself. Alternatively, of course, I can put it to him on your behalf. You can also send your question to the Mayor on WhatsApp. So I run the risk now of not being able to read messages about the topic that we're discussing, because I will be inundated with messages about tomorrow's show. But that's a price I'm prepared to pay. That's how it works. So, that you can WhatsApp me whenever you want on 0345 60600973. That's not quite true. You can WhatsApp the studio whenever you want on 0345 60600973. You can't WhatsApp me whenever you want unless you've got my phone number, which is... make sure you include the word Sadiq in order to get your contribution in ahead of time, just so that it will be a lot easier for us to find. And of course, the reasons why the Mayor of London will be a particularly welcome guest in the studio at the moment include this bizarre online racist campaign of lies about the city where he has been elected mayor 3 times running, culminating in some polling at the weekend from YouGov that showed the people who think London isn't safe roughly double if they don't live here, which proves all of the points we've been making on this programme now for a good few months. You cannot live here and recognise the way that London is described by various racist liars, online bots, St Petersburg trolls, and Nigel Farage's candidate for London Mayor, all contributing to the same foreign-sponsored propaganda and lies about our capital city. While, what was it? Was it Benjamin Franklin who described patriotism as the last refuge of a scoundrel? Let's go to Leicestershire. Shirley is in Sutton Bonington on this unexpected consensus so far about which of these 3 issues are the most significant for the future of the West: Ukraine, Greenland or Iran. What are you going with, Shirley?
Greenland.
Again? Tell me why.
Yeah. Because it could put NATO allies head on against each other. We are under the NATO agreement. If you attack one, you attack all and should come to the defence. If America goes into Greenland in an aggressive manner, that would entail the requirement of NATO to react to it in one way or another. And it could end up with the breaking up of the NATO alliance, or at least with America withdrawing. I mean, he may decide to pull out of NATO. He pulls out of so many things. Sorry, President Trump.
Yes, I know.
And he could decide on the face of that, excuse me, he would be pulling out of NATO, and he wouldn't think twice about it if it suited his purpose. And it would just add to the breakup of pre-existing agreements, as in, and I hate to use the B word, Brexit.
Yeah.
But I should have meant Russia was rubbing his hands with glee, or its hands with glee, or Putin was, when we pulled out of European Union, because the old adage, divide and conquer, applies. But as I say, with Greenland, I think that is so worrying because President Trump seems so hell-bent on getting it. He doesn't seem interested in using the abilities that he has under the agreement with Denmark. I think it was it in 1950 something or other?
What if he does it unaggressively? So this is a question I haven't actually contemplated before. What if we roll over? What if?
No, not us rolling over. It would have to be with the agreement of the Greenland people and Denmark.
Yeah, but in the absence of that, Denmark can't fight its corner alone. And
exactly.
An awful lot of you've mentioned Brexit. One of the reasons why Keir Starmer can't hang Brexit around Nigel Farage's neck, or indeed his closeness to Donald Trump around Nigel Farage's neck, is because, as I think Janan Ganesh writes a brilliant article in the Financial Times today about how it would damage him. He has to keep the US president sweet because he can do us so much harm. If that keeping him sweet extends to not challenging an annexation of Greenland against the will of the Greenland people, or a kind of cobbled together bribe or purchase, does that have a similarly profound impact on the world order, on the post-war settlement, or not?
Of course. This business of the special relationship, which is diverting slightly from your question, but the special relationship, I think that has disintegrated since President Trump came into the office of the White House. I think it is disintegrating. He loves the royal attention, and we've flattered him and pampered him, and I'm not saying that was necessarily the wrong thing to do.
No, that's the point, isn't it?
Things.
Yes.
Yeah. But nevertheless, I think that if President Trump decides he wants Greenland and goes for it, what are the NATO allies supposed to do? They can't sit back and just let it happen without some sort of reaction.
By fair means or foul, the co-option of Greenland would break all of these things. The suggestions of what can be done are not missing entirely. Timothy Garton-Ash suggests in this rather good piece in The Guardian today that you send, or the German Chancellor, the French President, the British Prime Minister, all visit Greenland alongside the Danish Prime Minister and the Canadian Prime Minister, Mark Carney, who a lot of us have been swatting up on the map. Of course, Canada is the NATO ally that is Greenland's actual western neighbour, and Trump would see that on television, and he would see the pictures, a number of highly visible, vividly uniformed European and Canadian liaison officers stationed in Greenland for the foreseeable future. The argument here is he needs to be scared off by European resolve and European unity.
But it hasn't demonstrated a great deal. With Ukraine, which of course is a very close second.
Yes, it is.
What's happening in Ukraine, you're quite right. Ukraine is just a tragedy in motion because it's still going on, and people on both sides are being killed. But nevertheless, we've had what was it the other day when you had how many heads of state all got together in Paris, was it? And there they all were, the what is it of the willing and the thank you. But that's not really, it doesn't seem to be speaking to Trump. President Trump seems to have his own way of thinking about everything, and it tends to reflect more upon how it impacts on himself and then America. And
that perhaps is why, I've been talking a lot this week about throwing rocks into the pond and wondering where the ripples lead, and that's why Iran hasn't featured much in this contemplation, because it doesn't have the obvious and immediate impact upon the West's infrastructure, upon the status quo. But it's also impossible to read what Trump might do there, because, as you say, he is not motivated by any of the traditional engines. He is not motivated by world peace. He is not motivated by the world order. He is not motivated by anything other than a self-interest, a weapons-grade self-interest, coupled with Stephen Miller's belief that you don't have any rights unless you are mighty. If you are not mighty, then you are just food for predators, and that big predators end up eating everything, which is, of course, the world that George Orwell predicted in 1984. Shirley, thank you. A brilliant call. It's Greenland. I would like to hear someone have a crack at explaining why Ukraine is marginally more significant than Greenland. I don't think Iran is going to get a look in at the moment, but understandably it remains on most of our front pages because US and UK personnel are being removed from areas which suggest that military action is expected, imminent or possible. You can only tick one of those boxes, or all of them. Max is in Coventry. Max, what would you like to say?
I'd like to cheat a little bit, if you'll allow me.
Of course.
I want to argue that both Ukraine and Greenland are one in the same problem.
Go on.
So we'll start with Ukraine, because obviously that occurred first. So Ukraine has done nothing but reveal the level of hypocrisies among the European West, effectively, and America at the time under the Biden administration as well, that a lot of rhetoric was louder than action. There was lots and lots about, fighting, with Ukraine until the end, coalition of the willing. But if you look at the support given, it's pretty much always been the minimum required to survive, especially from America. And in some cases, is almost a conditional love. Ukraine gets equipment when Ukraine is doing well on the battlefield. But when it's not doing well on the battlefield, it doesn't get equipment, and so on and so on and so on. So I think there's been a lot of Western ambivalence to Ukraine that has been really quite scary. And I gauge this as nothing but an absolute betrayal of Ukraine almost. And one of my aspirations as, somebody studying history is to burn whatever legacy these Western leaders could have had for this, because I think it's ridiculous. But
I know you've got more to say. Is there no defence in the idea that they have to both support Ukraine and somehow contain Putin in the NATO troops or more NATO intervention on Ukraine is a game changer. So they're operating within parameters that aren't necessarily hypocritical. They're certainly suboptimal, but they're not necessarily hypocritical. You can support Ukraine but not give them everything available, because that would actually make the bigger situation worse in the context of NATO powers going into battle against Russian powers.
I would agree to a degree. So I'd agree that Western troops on the ground in Ukraine would be something a lot of nations wouldn't deem a worthwhile risk, especially because of Russia's constant nuclear blackmail. I mean, Russia would have little influence if it wasn't for the fact that it could do nuclear blackmail. But the level of equipment given is very minimal. I mean, we'll take the US, for example. The M1 Abrams, They donated, 21 of them, and they've got, some estimates put it about 2,000 in storage. Not even in service, in storage.
Yeah, and Europe did. I mean, could have done more, but also had spent so long in hock, if you like, to American supremacy that they didn't really have the capability to act independently or to do anything significant without a full-throated White House supporting them. Go on, crack on with the parallel.
This is what I'm going to come back to. It's Europe being divided versus united, because united Europe could donate enough to Ukraine quite easily. A united Europe is a very major military power. But when the Trump administration came in and started favouring Putin in peace deal talks and attacks on Zelensky, I saw a very blatant threat to European sovereignty from both America and Russia, because this was two nations, one of which was going against the right for European nations to have their own independence, as effectively they were having say over the fate of Europe without the rest of Europe there. If Europe has no say in its own sovereignty or its own fate, then it has no sovereignty. And this is why you need Europe divided, or even just ambivalent, which is what I think we've been towards Ukraine, because then it allows, say, America and Russia to decide our fate without us, effectively. And this is where we then come...
About us, but without us.
Exactly. And then this is where we come to Greenland. Because Europe has shown that it's either ambivalent or divided, it's not going to act as a united force, which is what we would need to do to be a major power.
You're a bit more pessimistic than I am this morning. But that's allowed.
I tend to be on this area. I mean,
Go on, carry on. I'm interrupting you too much. We're late for the break. Finish that point.
Yeah. Is that because Europe has shown itself to be incapable of acting as a united force, America has seen an opportunity opportunity here, effectively, to either blackmail to take Greenland or to have it for themselves through military force. It could be either, because
doesn't matter.
There is no threat from Russia. They don't have the capability to take or even sustain an occupation of Greenland. So that's just rhetoric, and it's no coincidence that efforts to keep Europe divided keep occurring. This is a division of European sovereignty by two powers, one of which is only powerful because of nuclear blackmail, and another which has seen an opportunity of Europe either being divided or ambivalent to further its own, well, in Trump's case, his own legacy as he sees it.
And then we return, not for the first time, to the obviousness of the deliberate destabilising of Europe, long before Donald Trump first got into the White House, although that's part of the same project, part of the same programme. You can see it happening here. Prominent UK politicians who, well, in the case of Nathan Gill, were taking money from Kremlin stooges to parrot Kremlin talking points. One of Nigel Farage's closest friends and colleagues, indeed the leader of his party in Wales, Nigel Farage's admiration for Vladimir Putin, something that he desperately tries to backtrack from now, almost as furiously as he does the anti-Semitic horrors that he inflicted upon his schoolmates at Dulwich College, according to them. That destabilise, and the media can't go near it. 80% of the UK media can't go near what Max has just described, this deliberate destabilisation, disunity being festered and fermented among us because of the holy trinity of awfulness that they deliberately inflicted on the country, the Johnson, the Brexit, the Truss. Backing away from support for any of those three things would involve admitting epic wrongness. And until that epic wrongness is admitted, we carry on being essentially manipulated by Russian propaganda, up to and including a Mayor of London candidate who parrots it on a regular basis. Extraordinary. The actual Mayor of London joining us tomorrow, of course. Get your questions for him into the studio. And Max's point, I think, leads perfectly into this reminder of what the Prime Minister of Greenland had to say on Tuesday of this week, Jens Frederik Nielsen. We choose Denmark. We choose the EU. If that's not a reminder to the EU leadership of their role and importance at this moment, I don't know what is. It's also a reminder, of course, to people in this country about how unutterably stupid it was to vote to leave it.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 10:52. Mark, who was nearly the first caller, has texted his line just wasn't good enough, and now we know why. I'm here on the Polish-Ukrainian border waiting for a train to Kharkiv, the only place I can help at all outside of a ballot box. For me, the answer is Ukraine, James. The only place I can contribute to in a positive fashion. Greenland, the military presence of European troops who also happen to be NATO, and Iran, I think a false dawn, the overthrow will come, but not yet. I suppose depending upon, and that's a very personal answer from Mark, in a sense, as where can I make a difference? And Ukraine is at the top of his list on both counts. I can make a difference there, and that is the most significant issue facing the West. I think I would have agreed with you at 10 o'clock. I don't know whether I still do or not, but the arguments for Greenland, it feels a bit like that question towards the end of last year about what the most significant moment was, geopolitically. And the answer was the hideous assault upon Volodymyr Zelensky in the Oval Office by Donald Trump and his hideous sort of succubi. That was a moment of absolute profundity and a moment of enormous historical significance. And it ties into the conversation that we're having today, albeit that most roads are leading to Greenland being a bigger deal, for want of a better word, than Ukraine. I don't know. Maybe we've got a bit of recency bias as well, or maybe not. Mike's in Brussels. Mike, what would you like to say?
Oh, hello. It's nice to speak to you finally. I've thought about having a call with you on many an occasion. In this particular case,
thank you, Mike.
I'm a Brit.
Yes.
I'm a Brit living in Brussels and married to a Dane.
Okay. Oh, gosh. Okay.
So I think I have a particular perspective that I'd like to talk about. What I've heard so far is what I would call very much an intellectual perspective.
Mm.
And apart from the contribution of Mark, which I think is right on the button,
yes.
I have to look at the emotional perspective. My vote is 100% Ukraine. And it's because of the immediacy of the issue, the problem, and the dire situation that it would lead to, as far as Europe is concerned, if Russia was to win and expand.
But that, I suppose, the pushback would be, and other callers have made it, and you've heard it, would be that is what Russia. That's the threat that Russia always poses. That's the threat that Russia, I mean, in Putin's ascendancy, has always posed. Crimea would be the proof of that particular pudding. So it would simply be, albeit that by some measures it would be a, quote, bigger deal than Trump somehow getting his hands on Greenland. What would break in the latter scenario feels bigger than what would break in the former scenario, doesn't it?
Well, the view over here, as far as Brussels is concerned, is, number one, NATO is just pretty much dead in water anyway. Yes. We have a new alliance which is taking place, whether it's safe or the countries that are willing or whatever you wish to call it. Europe is uniting from a militarily point of view, as we know, and with the amount of effort, of investment, of sheer will, which is, the one thing that President Trump has done has to pull together Europe in a way that I've been living over here for nearly 50 years.
Right.
And I've never seen it so united as it is now. What is, though, the problem, and the closer you get to the eastern border, the more that it really, really does hit you, is that, for example, if you're in Copenhagen at the moment, your government are telling you to stockpile things in your cellar because we don't know when the attack will be happening. I mean, that is really close when you hear those types of things. And therefore, I have to go for the immediacy. That's just to be clear, that's Russia.
That's the threat of Russia, not the threat of the United States. Yes. Just to be clear, I know. I think I understood that, but not everybody listening would have done, given that Greenland is the other option in our conversation. So, I mean, in a sense, what you counter that point about precedent and unprecedented with is the fact that if Russia prevails in Ukraine, we know it will carry on. If Donald Trump somehow prevails in Greenland, we probably still fondly imagine that will be the end of that.
Agreed.
That's a brilliant call. Thank you, Mike. And I hope it was worth the wait from your perspective. It certainly was from mine. And now you've broken your duck. There's no excuse for not ringing me again. From Brussels to Glasgow, Al is there with what will probably be the last word on this. Al, what would you like to say?
Yeah, hi. I think Ukraine is by far the top priority.
Go on.
To place Greenland at the top of the list is to fall into a Putin trap.
Yeah.
I think it's a diversion. Trump can be deterred. We know that because we can see the examples of Gavin Newsom and Mark Carney. They have both California and Canada have been threatened with subjugation, and they've just said, get lost, and it hasn't taken that much just to deny Trump's rubbish.
The lessons of standing up to him are possibly not being learned by some European leaders.
Yes. So I think that if Starmer and the other leaders go to Greenland, show support, we maybe have a small exercise there, I think that's enough. And we can do that in parallel with Ukraine, because it's less of an effort to do that. It's keeping it at bay.
Yeah.
Whereas Ukraine, the outcome of that is pivotal to our security. And if Ukraine loses, then NATO will be attacked via Baltic states, which will draw us in. Plus, the Ukraine war is a major war, large scale, and it's happening on our doorstep.
I've had such a pendulum hour on this. I really have, because the calls have been so good, but they haven't been in complete agreement with each other. And you can't help thinking at the end of this hour whether or not, the Transatlantic Alliance is now talking about Greenland instead of talking about ending the war in Ukraine. And Applebaum, a writer I admire enormously, also makes the point that in a normal world or in an alternate world, allies would now be meeting to forge a common policy in Iran. And instead of that, we're talking about Greenland.
Yeah, so we have to deal with, keep our eye on the ball, deal with what's in front of us, deal with what's major, and
that would involve a quick and swift slapping of Donald Trump's wrists, and then a return to the much bigger question and the much a broader question of stopping Putin's aggression in Ukraine and potentially beyond. Thank you, Al, and indeed everybody who contributed to that hour of the programme. That's one of the, for me as a listener, and I may even have interrupted a little bit less than usual that hour, but for me as a listener, that is one of the most intellectually nourishing hours I can remember us having. And I'm aware of the luxury of being able to sit here and pontificate about things when people are being killed in Ukraine and indeed in Iran and are living in an unfamiliar fear in parts of Europe, as Mike in Brussels brilliantly portrayed. But you justified my faith in you in quite spectacular fashion. So much so that I'm not entirely sure what we're going to talk about next, but I'm drawn towards the waning of vegan appetite.
James O'Brien on LBC.
4 minutes after 11, and you're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. It's Thursday, so Mystery Hour is on the way next. I often boast. Well, boast is it's not fair, is it? I'm so hard on myself sometimes. I often remind you about my correct predictions, and it gets rather boring because there's so many of them. We're seeing my predictions about Elon Musk and Twitter come completely true now, which must be incredibly annoying for people who spend their lives waiting for me to be wrong about something. Well, good news. I have got veganism completely wrong. I sat here probably 5 years ago, and said that we were in the midst of an unstoppable, incremental revolution. I genuinely believed it. I honestly thought that the direction of history was both clear and irreversible, and that we would, as a population, and I'm confining it to the United Kingdom, we would, as a population, increasingly eschew the consumption of meat and, crucially, increasingly embrace the vegan lifestyle. Two things. This is very much on the list of things that I used to be an idiot about. And I did actually manage to upset vegans the other day, which I haven't done for years. In fact, my social media experience is so positive now that I'm not on it, except Blue Sky. I'd forgotten what it was like to be, for people to think that I'm being obnoxious. And all I did was post praise of a new restaurant or a new chicken shop, a new takeaway, Korean chicken takeaway in Brentford, where I live, that was just incredible. So I thought I'd give a new business in my manor a little bit of a boost. And it deeply upset many vegans, and that's fine. But there's a line, isn't there, between reminding everybody you're a vegan, because that is obviously part of the territory, and being rude to people who are not. And you have to you have to believe that we're doing something disgusting, don't you, if you are a vegan? So of all the subjects that I used to be unnecessarily obnoxious about, this is the one where I feel myself lurching back into obnoxiousness, because vegans are obnoxious to us, to meat eaters. Not all of you. Don't at me to tell me that you're not. But it was on this territory that I got called a corpse-eating psychopath, and it wasn't even tongue-in-cheek. So, I mean, I don't know how interested you are in the journeys that I describe in my book, how not to be wrong, but it was all about working out, partly in therapy and largely as a consequence of therapy, why I held ridiculous opinions. So my first book, How to Be Right, was not undermining, it was examining what underpinned other people's ridiculous opinions. How on earth did we end up, for example, as a population voting for Brexit? Not just because of media manipulation. It must have something to do with us being idiots. So I was examining and analysing other people's idiocy in my first book. And in my second book, I was examining my own idiocy. So there's a long list of things, from obesity to tattoos and pet ownership. And as I mentioned to you at the end of last week, loads of things where I had very, very pungent opinions. Did I ever tell you who it was that introduced me to the phrase pungent opinions? In a moment that was, in retrospect, I think quietly significant for me. It was Terry Wogan, the doyen of radio broadcasters, the absolute don. And I met him backstage on a television show. where he was a proper guest and I was one of the people that was being lined up to talk about the news or to have a heated debate about something. God, I do not miss that little side of the job. You know, turning up on daytime television to have a row with someone off The Only Way is Essex or I don't know. And I met Terry Wogan, and I don't know whether he was pretending or someone had just given him a quick briefing on who I was, but he went, yes. He said, "You're the fellow with the pungent opinions." He was Welsh, you know, Terry Wogan. He said, "You're the fellow with the pungent opinions." And I remember thinking, I'm not sure that I want to be I don't want to be the fellow with the pungent opinions. I want to be the fellow with the right opinions. But pungency, is that a quality? I don't know whether that had an effect on me, but a few years later, I found myself examining my pungent opinions and asking the question of whether or not they were right or wrong. Oh, got some breaking political news for you. This is interesting. Wow. Oh, wow. Okay, this is one for the anoraks. We should probably get Natasha down for this. Shall I wait for Natasha to break it, or shall I? Well, everyone's going to look it up if I don't break it now. Kemi Badenoch has sacked Robert Jenrick. So, in the battle between two bald people over a comb, Kemi Badenoch has now prevailed because she says she has been shown clear and irrefutable evidence that he was going to defect in a way designed to be as damaging as possible to his shadow cabinet colleagues. I'm going to go out on a limb here and speculate that he was probably going to defect to Nigel Farage's outfit because he'd fit right in, wouldn't he? With all the racists and the tax avoiders and the liars and the incompetents and the weirdos. Honest Bob Jenrick, in his current incarnation, motivated like Nadeem Zahabi entirely by self-interest, was, I tell you what, I'm going to have to eat some humble pie if he was preparing to defect to the Liberal Democrats, aren't I? Or the Green Party. But I'll read you the statement. "I have sacked Robert Jenrick from the Shadow Cabinet, removed the whip and suspended his party membership with immediate effect. I was presented with clear, irrefutable evidence that he was plotting in secret to defect in a way designed to be as damaging as possible to his Shadow Cabinet colleagues and the wider Conservative Party. The British public are tired of political psychodrama," says Kemi Badenoch, "and so am I. They saw too much of it in the last government. They're seeing too much of it in this government. I will not repeat those mistakes." I mean, that's a fairly sticky wicket, isn't it? Sacking a prominent, a former leadership rival from the Shadow Cabinet and removing his party membership while claiming to be opposed to psychodrama. There seems to me to be a little bit of room for suggesting that she's done the opposite. I don't really know whether or not you want to talk about this. I do. I want to talk to Natasha about it, but I don't know that will we get a phone? I'll tell you what I'll do. I've got absolutely no doubt whatsoever that we can have an interesting phone-in about veganism. I'm not convinced that we can have an interesting phone-in about Kemi Badenoch sacking Honest Bob Jenrick. I don't know if it's one for the Westminster watchers or whether it is something that has impact and interest in the wider world, whether it has impact and interest beyond. So I'm going to let you decide. I am going to let you decide. Whether or not Kemi Badenoch has been hacking people's emails again is a question that many will mischievously wonder. I think we can conclude that she hasn't, but she has been shown evidence that Robert Jenrick has been plotting to defect, presumably to reform, once again demonstrating Keir Starmer's quip yesterday that it's becoming a laundry service for disgraced and or disgusting Tories. But she has sacked him. Is that something you want to talk about? I mean, does it make her look good, bad, indifferent? Do you care about this? 0345 6060973 is the number you need. It might be a little bit tricky to do both topics, but it is very much breaking political news. However, as I tell you on an almost daily basis, being breaking news, being big news, being a significant political moment does not necessarily translate into being an interesting or a major phone-in subject. Is Natasha coming to join us on this one? 13 minutes after 11 is the time. Here we are. Are you out of breath? I like it when you have to sprint at breakneck speed into the studio. I think it's fair to say that people might have been speculating upon the possibility of a defection, but nobody saw this coming.
No, that's right, James. Sorry, I was just on the phone to someone trying to find out some more information.
Fair enough. You can do that now. You can do it.
Yes, should I just put them on the line? Should I just put them on the line? This is a huge moment, isn't it?
I think so.
Obviously, we saw Robert Jenrick be taken into Kemi Badenoch's shadow cabinet when she became leader, and that must have been quite difficult for both people to do, right? So there's a person that's just won this election, this leadership contest, bringing you in, giving you a big top job, but obviously you've lost, and you've lost pretty badly. So this is quite something. And you're completely right. We've seen, I think, 23 former Tories move over to the Reform Party in the last year. But Kemi Badenoch saying today that she has received irrefutable evidence that Robert Jenrick was plotting to do so. And just before, I'm told, the local election. So at a moment to try to cause maximum damage for the Conservative Party at a time where they're already facing a lot of pressure. And I'm told that they'd seen this evidence. They'd been told that Robert Jenrick had been meeting with Nigel Farage, including having dinner with him at the end of last year. And they had what they believed was all the proof they needed that he was about to hugely embarrass Kemi.
So in April, May of this year, it would be late April, early May.
Yeah, I guess so. Sometime between now and the May local elections, which obviously Kemi Badenoch, the Conservative Party, are going to face a really tough time in. So the person I've just been speaking to within the Conservative Party has described it as a total stab in the back to the party that voted for him and his shadow cabinet colleagues as well. They said it's really disappointing that we've done our utmost to try to accommodate him, giving him a big brief that played to his talents, and Kemi is feeling really disappointed about it. As
a tireless chronicler of Kemi Badenoch's competence or lack thereof, I need to ask, there's no chance she's got this wrong, is there? There's no chance that she's been misinformed or misled.
In fairness, we have been hearing about Robert Jenrick potentially plotting and his, upset with the sort of direction of leadership under Kemi Badenoch for a while, since basically she appointed him to that shadow cabinet job. So for the last year, there's been lots of rumours about what Robert Jenrick is up to and whether he has been on manoeuvres. That has been in play for quite a long time. And to be fair, she's not taken any action against it or those rumours in the last year.
Can you really? You
can't. It's just speculation unless you do have some form of proof. And like I say, they are pointing to this proof being conversations that have been had, dinners that have been had. I mean, why on earth would Robert Jenrick go to meet Nigel Farage unless there was a real chance?
Unless they're discussing a defection. Should we have a listen to what she's had to say herself in the last few minutes?
This morning, I removed the Conservative whip from Robert Jenrick after dismissing him from the shadow cabinet. I was very sorry to be presented with clear, irrefutable evidence, not just that he was preparing to defect, but he was planning to do so in the most damaging way possible to the Conservative Party and his shadow cabinet colleagues. It is my responsibility to protect our party, and faced with that information, I took the only decision that any responsible leader could. Because the British public are tired of political psychodrama. So am I. They saw too much of it in the last government. They're seeing too much of it in this government. I will not repeat those mistakes. When I was elected leader, I committed to doing politics differently. Disloyalty and dishonesty undermine trust in politics. They're also disrespectful to our party members, our councillors, MPs, and most of all, voters. You all deserve better. Conservatives suffered a heavy defeat in 2024. That was painful, but we are rebuilding with strong principles, clear plans, and with a serious team united around a shared purpose. When individuals choose to walk away from that effort for personal ambition, that tells you nothing about the Conservative Party and everything you need to know about them. There will be more to say, and I know a lot of commentary about this decision. But I want you all to be in no doubt. It's a time of global uncertainty. I am focused on holding the government to account, ensuring they are acting in the national interest, and that Conservatives deliver a proper plan for a stronger economy, stronger borders, and a stronger Britain.
18 minutes after 11. Times like this, Natasha, you're always sort of trying to think of precedents. And I can't think of any.
No, I can't think of any either, James. It is, I think, totally fascinating for anybody that's interested in politics. And you might not be ready to vote for the Conservative Party again after feeling betrayed by what they've done over the last 14 years of government. But Kemi Badenoch, obviously, was taking on a really difficult challenge. She, won that leadership election. She won it decisively. There were lots of other people in the fray that were trying to take the party in different directions. It's fair to say she's had a very bumpy ride, hasn't she, in the last year? But many people say that she's starting to tick up a little bit in terms of popularity.
What is the difference between because this is the problem Farage has now, is that the two parties to outsiders seem more or less identical since people like Jenrick and others have started echoing the rhetoric of reform, being as racist. You know, what Jenrick has said about, was it cultural coherence or was that somebody else? Or what he said about black faces on the streets of Birmingham. He could easily have been a reform candidate talking about black faces in adverts. And Kemi Badenoch hasn't put any clear blue water between her leadership and that kind of racist rhetoric. So reform no longer have a monopoly on racist rhetoric. Tories have been joining in enthusiastically. Punters can't see much difference between them. And the more people migrate from one to the other, oddly, perhaps, the more similar they look if Badenoch persists in promoting people who say things like, what was it, who was the one that talked about cultural coherence? It was a woman, wasn't it? Relatively...
Sarah... Are you talking about Sarah Poachin?
No, the Tory...
Oh, sorry, Katie Lamb.
Katie Lamb.
Yeah.
So Badenoch has no words of caution for people like Katie Lamb when they come out with what could look like job applications for Nigel Farage's party. Yeah. So punters might start thinking, well, this is the same lot that were in power for 14 years, just with a different figurehead, just with a different frontman.
Yeah, and we were talking, earlier this week about the defection of Nadeem Zahawi, who arguably was Reform's biggest defection yet from the Conservative Party. This obviously would have been a coup of a different scale.
Oh, huge. Let's not, objectively speaking, a cabinet member that's why I say it's unprecedented.
For sure, yeah, and absolutely. And you're totally right that Robert Jenrick is probably more, and especially in the last few years, has probably been leaning more to the reform side of the Conservative Party. So he obviously found it tough to stay in there. And when you've got a party like Nigel Farage and you see your leader doing things differently to how you are, he was always going to be on defection watch. He was been on defection watch since the minute he was put in the shadow cabinet as shadow justice secretary. In fairness, what would you have done if you were Kemi Badenoch? What was your other option to be but to bring him in your wing and to try to get him to work together with you? I think you're right, though. I don't think there is any sort of precedent for this sort of dramatic sacking, unless, obviously, and Kemi Badenoch said in her clip just there, more is going to come out. We do have more information I'm sure that she will be wanting to share at some point. But, is this being used as a way to shore up her leadership, and to try and show something of strength? Of course, she looks strong, she looks decisive. This is probably a good look for her. And many people will say, it's great that you've sacked
She looks strong, but what else could she do? If the evidence she's got is incontrovertible, what else could she actually do?
Yeah.
So, delivery will be a question here, and we've now heard from Nigel Farage, who is, we really have heard from Nigel Farage. I'm not going to play the clip of him squealing Bernard Manning and refusing to answer questions about telling Jewish school friends that they belonged in the gas chambers or that Hitler was right, as a growing number of Jewish former school contemporaries have contended, have explained. He has been asked about this at a press conference, and we can hear that after this.
James O'Brien on LBC.
23 minutes after 11. I may often tell you that I can't think of what question to ask, but I think it's more excusable on some occasions than others. If you're just tuning in, Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary and narrowly-ish defeated contender for the Conservative Party leadership at the last round of leadership elections, has just been sacked by the winner of that leadership election, Kemi Badenoch. He has been sacked for plotting to defect to Nigel Farage's Reform Party. And I apologise in advance for inflicting this man's whining voice upon your ears, but we have to hear what he has to say.
Well, I never reveal private conversations with anybody, which is why, when people like Malcolm came to me to talk and he was a front bencher, nothing ever leaked. So I'm going to say that I've had conversations with a number of very senior Conservatives over the course of the last week, over the course of the last month, and a lot of them realise that for all the talk that Kemi's doing better at PMQs, which is true, for all the talk of a supposed Kemi bounce, I think a lot of them realise that on May the 7th, or should I say May the 8th, the Conservative Party will cease to be a national party. They will all be obliterated in Scotland, in Wales, in the Red Wall councils, if they're not all cancelled. We'll find out later on today about that. So there's a lot of people seriously considering their future. As far as Mr. Jenrick's concerned, of course I've talked to Robert Jenrick. Was I on the verge of signing a document with him? No. But have we had conversations? Yes.
So he was considering leaving the Conservatives and joining Reform UK?
I think virtually every Conservative is considering leaving the Conservatives, yes.
Including Mr. Jenrick?
I think that's been in his mind, yes. I've little doubt it's been in his mind. But I mean, you know, have we signed and sealed a deal? No. And many of those that come and talk to me result in them not coming. But then I never betray confidences or say exactly who they are. But there are a lot of people in Mr. Jenrick's position who don't see a viable future for the Conservative Party, think May the 7th is going to be a very, very big day. And frankly, many who are beginning to see parallels with what happened with the Liberal Party almost exactly 100 years ago, when they went from being a natural party of government to being a very small provincial party and have stayed mostly there for the last 100 years. Thank you very much indeed. There we are, breaking news. It's all happening, isn't it? Lindsay Bewes from BBC Scotland.
26 minutes after 11 is the time. Nigel Farage there, very gamely describing himself as someone who never leaks details or discloses details of private conversations. His employers over at GBB's were reporting on a private conversation that he had with Donald Trump in November, and he was more than happy to share the details of that because they were, if he was telling the truth, which is always 52-48, they were potentially damaging to the BBC. So old Nigel lying again there, just as he's lied about his boycott of the BBC, which I presume is still in place, although somehow he's going to manage to appear on Laura Kuenssberg's show on Sunday. Let's just do it straight, okay? So this is a bit different from the last hour when I was calling upon you for quite detailed and deep thinking. And my goodness me, you delivered. This is not an invitation to engage in detailed or deep thinking unless you really, really want to. This is almost an invitation to have a go at being Natasha and Aggie's deputy, to being the third member of the LBC political team and providing a little bit of analysis and commentary, as opposed to just breaking the story, which we have now done. I'm normally allergic to those two questions, as you know. Well, I keep saying I'm allergic to them, usually as a precursor to asking you, do you care? And is this a big deal? And those are really the two questions that are in place here. There's no point ringing a radio station to tell me that you don't care about something. In fact, I don't really understand why you text me to tell me that you don't care about something that we're talking about. It's a very odd use of your time and a complete waste of mine. So really, I'm asking why this matters. You can argue that it doesn't matter, but only if you do care. Am I overcomplicating the question unduly? I just want you to tell me your straight reaction to what is, by any measure, quite a big political story. I'm not entirely sure how big it is in terms of impact, precisely because of what you just heard old Gas Chambers Farage say a minute ago. The line there about Tories being in decline. If the Tories were still a natural party of power, if the Tories were still riding high, if it was still a two-party system, then the defection would be huge. Labour to SDP probably would be the only precedent I can think of from my own a sort of period of political awakening. So Labour MPs defecting to the SDP, Michael Foot perceived as a lame duck leader, centrism being represented by Shirley Williams and David Owen and their colleagues, Roy Jenkins and the other fella whose name I can never remember, which is pitiful really, considering I got a politics A-level at around the time the SDP disbanded. But the significance of the defection is hard to pin down precisely, exactly because the Tory party is in such doldrums. So that's my excuse for not actually feeling in my guts how big a deal this actually is. I hope you can have a crack at explaining why you think it is or it isn't, OK? The number you need is 0345 6060 973. So you care about politics, you can care about the defection, you can recognise the significance of the moment, but I don't, just because you can't bear any of the characters involved, you can't muster up much interest in it, is not what I'm interested in hearing from you. What I'm interested in hearing from you, we could ask whether or not Farage is right, and is this another nail in the coffin? There you go. I got there in the end. Is this another nail in the coffin of the Conservative Party, or is it a mark of Kemi Badenoch actually getting her house in order and beginning to... she still lags in the polls quite far behind where they were at the last election, which was a disastrous result for them. But Bill Rogers it was. Sorry, Bill Rogers. David Owen, Bill Rogers, Shirley Jenkins. David Owen, Bill Rogers, Shirley Jenkins... Roy Jenkins, Shirley Williams, David Owen and Bill Rogers. I got an A in that A-level. It's an absolute mystery. I should probably hand it back in again. But there's two possibles here that I can see. There'll be others that you can see. One is that this is another nail in the coffin of the Conservative Party, because if someone so senior, someone that was pretty close to becoming the leader 10 minutes ago, is hitting the road and walking away, does that speak of much deeper and bigger problems for them? Or... Is Badenoch's response the big story here? And in fact, she is beginning, if not to look like a leader, then to look like a little bit less of a plonker than she has done for most of her political career. The phone lines are open. Alison in Bury St Edmunds has rung in about veganism, but is quite happy to talk about the breaking news that happened while she was waiting to talk about veganism. I may take some advice on whether we let her. Well, Dominic Ellis brings you the headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
11:34 is the time. It's one of those weird breaking stories that some people will be unspeakably excited about and some people will be the absolute mother of all meh. But I'm somewhere between the two. A senior Conservative MP close to Kemi Badenoch says they had incontrovertible, one of my favourite words, as you know, evidence that Robert Jenrick was about to defect, including a full speech and media plan. So it's saying we keep a close eye on everyone. We have people everywhere, they tell the BBC, which sounds simultaneously sinister and comical, doesn't it? Like Kemi Badenoch's Stasi, keeping I suppose she did hack into Harriet Harman's House of Commons computer, didn't she? So maybe they are actually operating in a manner comparable to the East German secret police. And that's the word she used as well. Clear, irrefutable evidence that Robert Jenrick was planning to defect. Farage coming pretty close to confirming that it would be to his outfit, which isn't going to surprise anybody. It would be very much man bites dog territory if he had been planning to defect to the Greens or the Liberal Democrats. But it is only months since he secured 43.5% of the votes to Badenoch's 56.5% in the election to be the actual leader of the Conservative Party. I never know where the line is between ego and principle, but I suspect in Jenrick's case there isn't one. There is no principle. He's like Groucho Marx. I've got principles. If you don't like them, I've got others. He's changed everything, really, about his political DNA in the course of just 5 years in the public eye. It's only 10 minutes ago he'd sort of set himself up as the scourge of fare evaders, which you realise now was part of the racist narrative of hating London because it's such a multicultural success story. So anyway, there's the story. Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick sacked from the Tory front bench, sacked from the Tory party, whip removed, membership rescinded. Whether or not there'll be a by-election in Newark, I do not know, but I just want you to tell me what you think of this. It's my job to come up with the clever questions, and sometimes the news is too fresh to do so. But whether or not this is a nail in the coffin of the Conservative Party, because if they're hemorrhaging people who were running to be leader 10 minutes ago, they've got a particular flavour of problem. Or the problem I've got with this, actually, is that the only way the Tory party survive is by doing away with all the racism. The only offer, I would think about Tamara in Telford quite often. Do you remember Tamara in Telford? We're having what is a Tory? Reform and racism are so absolutely intertwined that for the Tories to still be on the racist platform, to still be saying hideous things about people's skin colour, or it was Jenrick who talked about Birmingham, wasn't it? And yet his own village where he lives, I think, according to the last census, had one person of colour in it. But he's incredibly spooked when he finds himself in a place where there are lots of people of colour. So for the Tories to still be there seems to me to be electorally ridiculous, given that Reform have got the racism vote sewn up. Absolutely copper bottom. Farage has been an infamous racist for his entire public career, right from the moment where the man who actually founded UKIP explained how freely and liberally Farage would use the N-word and talk about how they would never win the N-word vote. He might pretend these days that he isn't, but everybody knows that he is. And therefore, for the Tories to be in that space at all has seemed to me for a while to be a little bit ridiculous. Kemi Badenoch, as a black woman, was incredibly well placed to rebrand the Tories as the opposite of what Farage and Jenrick and Katie Lamb represent. But she's failed utterly to do that. So I don't know whose answers to this question would be most interesting, but somebody who sees themselves as a traditional Tory. Is this good news or bad news for you? Let's see what Alison in Bury St Edmunds has to say. Alison, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Lovely to talk to you again. And
we'll see.
I did have to laugh to what you said before the advert, but that was quite good. Thank you.
You're very welcome. I like it. Well, we've all got to move on a sixpence, Alison. You were on hold to talk about veganism, but you told Eleanor you wanted to talk about the breaking news instead. So here you are.
Yeah, well, I think we could do both, but we'll talk about the breaking news first. Firstly, your reaction to it coming through was pretty palpable over the radio. I thought I could hear it in your voice, the shock.
It's a big story.
Surprise,
it's a big story, but is it a big deal, I suppose, is the question.
Is it a big deal? Well, I'm not Conservative by any shape or form. Kemi Badenoch is, well, she is what she is. But I think she's pulled a blinder, to be fair. She's gone the whole hog. He's lost everything by the looks of it, by the sound of it. And, you know, over to Farage with open arms, I think, with Nadeem Sahawi and all the other reprobates. But, yeah, I think she's taken the wind out of their sails. And we wait to see what the reasons were. But if it is true, which it
I don't know what his reasons would just be. I don't know if he'd be worried about his seat in Newark, but it would just be self-interest. I don't think Kemi Badenoch's ever going to promote him higher than where he currently is. And of course, she has, at least for now, overcome the whispers and fears or rumours of imminent challenges to her leadership. It looked 6 months ago as if she wouldn't last until Christmas. So she's seen off that threat. The imminence of that threat is in abeyance. So Jenrick can't see any way of getting a little bit higher up the greasy pole within the Conservative Party. So why doesn't he go to join Farage with the promise, in the event of Farage winning the election, with the promise of being Foreign Secretary or Home Secretary or one of the big jobs? There are always tweets, of course. Farage, not long ago, reports Jenrick is a hypocrite who was planning these long-term contracts to process Channel migrants whilst he was in government. Don't believe a word that he says on anything. I'd agree with Mr Farage on that one, actually. I wouldn't believe a word either of them say. Another one, when Robert Jenrick was Immigration Minister, he grew the number of illegal migrants living in free hotels to 56,000. He is no friend of Epping. That was on the 20th of August of last year. Whether that's coincided with when they were having these secret meetings or not, I do not know. But there are always tweets. It took about 13 seconds for people to dig out the Nadeem Zahawi ones. It's taken even less time for people to dig out the Jenrick and Farage ones. Here's Jenrick on the 27th of May of last year. The two-child benefits cap was introduced to restore fairness. Now Labour and Reform are locked in a bidding war to splash out more in handouts. Why is Farage backing this policy? Has he cooked this up after one too many pints at his local? Has a joint found its way into his usual packet of Marlborough Golds? Oh, what a hideous bunch they are. Cameron's in Manchester. Cameron, what do you reckon?
I think, firstly, I agree completely with the last caller. I think that Kemi's done, although I'm not a Tory.
I'm not here to. I don't want to, rain on her chips. But what else could she do? And she's done it well. She's done it effectively. And she's taken us all by surprise. But it's not exactly a masterstroke. She could not really do anything else if the evidence is, as they say, irrefutable.
Yeah, otherwise Reform would have made a song and dance about it, and it would have been pushed further into extinction. But I think it's just, for me, it's just contradictory that Nigel Farage kind of goes hand in hand, but he keeps saying that he wants to be a new face in politics. He wants to get away from the establishment, etc. But he keeps filling his ranks with ex-Tories. I mean, Lee Anderson, Nadeem earlier this week, Andrea Jenkins, and most
Andrea Jenkins there as well. This is his challenge. This is his challenge, really, isn't it? In a way, in that it's been.
Yeah.
I'll tell you who he is. He's the kid who's had his face pressed up to the sweet shop window for his entire political career, while he's been squealing endlessly that he hates sweets. This is the nature of the anti-establishment rhetoric that Boris Johnson used to deploy as well. He's had his face squished up against the sweet shop window, desperately dreaming of being inside the sweet shop while screaming to anyone who would listen that he actually hates sweets. And now he's in this position where he is... he's on the threshold of the sweet shop. How on earth is he going to take with him the people who believed him when he said that he hated sweets?
And I think he does it because he needs people that can actually, although I don't like any of those people I just rattled off, that will actually make policy. I think people who are joining X, Y, and Z, people that are sort of standing up, haven't got any political, well, I suppose, historic political knowledge, and so he's filling his ranks with people who do. Well, but at the same time, I don't think it's going to alienate his base.
Well, but that's the question, because he's not been wrong about his base yet. I mean, when he credits them with having zero integrity or intelligence, he almost always gets proved right. So here the question is, will they notice that he's now doing the polar opposite of what... I mean, it's not even very difficult to find, is it, Cameron? You got it on almost got it on speed dial.
My message to you is clear, plain and simple. Never trust a Tory. Did you get that? I'll repeat it. Never trust a Tory. They will always let you down. They will always betray you.
That's what you're talking about. And his calculation is always that his own base is either too racist or too stupid to care about all the lies and hypocrisy.
Yeah. I never trust a Tory except when they join me.
All of the ones that are now joining me. And why are they joining him? Because they agree, I suppose, with the analysis that the party in its current form is, if not electorally finished, then certainly electorally challenged. Thank you, Cameron. Thank you, Alison. Paul in Bude in Cornwall will be up first after the next break. After him, it could, of course, be you. The number you need is 0345 60 973. Have I shared that analogy with you before? I think it's one of my best. I've been working on it for a while. I worked on it with Connor, my colleague upstairs. I say I worked on it with him. I shared it with him and he looked gloriously unimpressed. But I really like the sweet shop analogy because I have somewhat reluctantly and unpleasantly, and it cost me a fortune in hand sanitizer. I followed Nigel Farage's career quite closely from the moment when I publicly debanked him in this radio studio over 10 years ago, something that is incredibly easy to do, and I do not know why other journalists find it so difficult to highlight him for the chiselling, grifting bigot that he is. But that sweet shop analogy is brilliant. It's the only way you can make sense of the hypocrisy. He was lying when he pretended that he didn't want to be part of the establishment. He'd take a seat in the House of Lords in a heartbeat. He's desperate, always has been, desperate to be part of the establishment. The thing that people don't understand about Farage is that he wasn't prepared to pretend not to be racist to get there. And all of the Tories that are now joining him had to pretend not to be racist. Possibly some of them are now pretending to be racist in order to get accepted into his party. But they all had to pretend not to be racist in order to get ahead in the Conservative Party. Farage was never prepared to pretend not to be racist, or he was so obviously racist that he would never be able to pretend because he knew all his former school friends would come out and explain how racist he was with his jokes about Hitler being right, and the gas, if jokes is the right word. So he was so racist for so long that he could never pretend not to be racist in order to get ahead politically. So the only way in which he could achieve political success was if and when racism became unshaming. Racism became acceptable. Racism no longer became a deal breaker. And you can see that racism is no longer a deal breaker for right-wing politicians from the way that Robert Jenrick talks about visiting Birmingham, or Katie Lamb talks about cultural coherence. It's all there. It's crystal clear. So that's the point. He just wanted the establishment that he was desperate to be part of to stop pretending that it didn't contain lots of racism. And here we are. And that's the end of my TED Talk.
James O'Brien on LBC.
49, not for the first time, the rather splendid Financial Times journalist Stephen Bush has articulated something that I have failed to articulate when I was simply wanging on about how, don't read too much into this, about Badenoch being strong or Badenoch being brilliant, because she had absolutely no choice. If she was presented with irrefutable evidence of a senior colleague intending to defect, she has no choice but to sack them. Strength would have looked like sacking them on a point of principle, rather than, as Stephen puts it, you're dumping me. No, I'm dumping you. and Stephen writes on Blue Sky, sums up how rubbish Badenoch is, that she has been forced into a "you're dumping me, I'm dumping you" scenario, rather than just sacking and disbarring Jenrick over the many, many things that would have kept him out of any Tory cabinet since 1968. That's the point I was trying to make. Any post-Enoch Powell Tory cabinet would have chucked Jenrick out for 2, 3, 4 of the things that he's done since losing the leadership election, and the same probably for Katie Lamb and others. But instead, Badenoch has not put clear blue water between her party and the racism of Farage's party. Instead, the racism has proved contagious or infectious. So what does this defection represent? He didn't win by much in Newark, actually. He was only 3,000 or so votes ahead of the Labour candidate in second place, and then a Reform candidate coming in at roughly half of the Labour vote behind him. So it could just be pure electoral self-interest, but that would involve a little bit of confusion over why he's gone so early. Paul's in Bude in Cornwall. Paul, what would you like to say?
Oh, hi, James. This happened the last time I phoned. The person before me basically said what I was going to say, and I'm listening to it. I'm thinking, oh, no. But I'll say my opinion is that Farage won't be able to resist these people coming across.
Why not? Why doesn't he tell him to slip? Because he's an
egomaniac. And he's Trump. He loves the adoration,
and because he's
running around.
We've seen with the councils that they're all crackpots and weirdos. The people that are ending up in charge of the councils, they can't even agree with each other about what they're disagreeing about.
Exactly, but he doesn't mind as long as they think he's a wonderful bloke. He'll go along with it.
Yeah, so it is an exercise in knee bending. He's sitting there thinking, having spent all these years waiting for his moment, they're all now coming along and giving it to him. That's interesting. I don't know. I'd be interested if someone asked to defect and they said no. That would be an interesting moment, wouldn't it?
Well, yeah. But also the core vote of Reform, as far as I can tell, including my brother, is that it's the fact that they're none of the above was the appeal. If you just fill it full of ex-Tories, they're going to lose that core appeal.
Do you think they are, though? I mean, no offence to your brother, but isn't he getting something from them that goes a little bit beyond none of the above?
No, he's pretty much just that.
Really?
There is an element of...
But Farage is Mr. Brexit. Farage is Mr. Brexit.
Well, he agreed with Brexit as well.
Yeah, but Brexit was a disaster.
No, my brother still thinks it was a good idea.
Oh, Lord.
Unfortunately.
Okay. Yeah. Well, then he's not going to... But that's what I kind of meant when I said no offence to your brother. I mean, is he stupid enough to believe in the unbelievable? Well, and the answer is yes.
He can't even listen to your programme, to be honest.
No wonder he's wrong about everything, Paul. But I don't know. I mean, because all you've got, what he gets with Farage is a chance to pretend that Brexit only went badly because of the Tories being in charge. He gets a chance to pretend that despite Farage thinking Liz Truss's budget was the best thing he'd seen since sliced bread, he gets to pretend that all the things he's voted for, your brother, over the last 14 years. Big Boris Johnson fan, was he, Paul?
To a degree at the beginning, but not at the end.
No, well, none of them were at the end, mate, including the Conservative Party. But all of the things he's voted for over the last 14 years, he gets to pretend that he wasn't wrong by putting his lot in with Farage.
He'll kill me for mentioning him now.
I'll give him my love, won't you? What's his name?
Martin.
I didn't think you were going to tell me. I was joking. All right, Martin. Well, he's not going to hear, is he? He's never going to know that you mentioned him. 11:53 is the time. But Martin, Paul's brother down in Bude, is a Boris Johnson voter, probably thought that Liz Truss was a genius, and if he didn't, then he was a Nigel Farage fan when Nigel Farage was telling you that Liz Truss was a genius. Probably thought austerity was a great idea. Voted Tory in 2010, probably voted Tory in 2015, certainly voted Tory in 2019. The consequences of all of those votes, disasters that have been visited upon the country, are not the fault of the people that voted for it. It's all the fault of an other. There is a brilliant Brexit, but it goes to a different school, and that is how Farage hoovers up votes from people who I don't personally think will necessarily be alienated by the sort of flotsam and jetsam of failed, flailing and failing Tories migrating towards the only party that has been, or the only party leader who has been a lifelong advocate of racism, as opposed to all these arrivistes, all these people who've only discovered their racism relatively recently and in the aftermath of Brexit. It's 11:54. And Natasha's got a little bit more detail for us, which we shall hear shortly. But before that, Junaid is in Fulham. Junaid, what would you like to say?
Hi, good morning to you, James. Thanks very much for letting me on the show again. A third time, I think. It's been fantastic. No, I think what bewilders me and astounds me, and everyone should be astounded, is how quickly Conservative politicians in particular abandon their principles on everything they believe in.
Yes.
Let's remember that Mr. Jenrick shared a platform with Ken Clarke, advocating that we should remain in the European Union, and Liz Truss also did the same with George Osborne at the time of that referendum, and they've gone, and they will do anything to be in the public spotlight.
When were they lying? When do you think they even have a brain that works in that way? So in their own head, do you think they were wrong about the European Union, or do you think they were lying then, or do you think they were right both times? They've changed. Go on.
They will just go with the flow of the majority opinion in the Conservative Party. So Jenrick doesn't mind about what's happened, because he was going to, maybe he might still be able to challenge Badenoch in June or July for leadership. This has probably discredited him in a way, but I don't know how Tory members will feel about it. But it just opens a door for James Cleverly to take over.
That's the Tamara in Telford option, isn't it? I mean, James Cleverly is not Tory leader because 3 or 4 of his supporters were too clever for their own good.
But in my view, if any merger on any grounds happens between the Tories and the Reform, they are both done. They are both finished. Because if you see what's happening in the polls recently, I think Labour and the Tories are going up a bit, actually. And Reform have gone down. But anyway, that's just by the way.
No, you're right. I mean, what is the big takeaway? That the less principled you are, the more likely you are to be drawn towards Nigel Farage, who is, I suppose, the king of the unprincipled. Except on the racism. You've got to give the guy credit. He's never abandoned his racism or pretended that he wasn't racist in order to get ahead politically in a way that presumably Robert Jenrick has, unless he's lying about being racist out of self-interest, and he was telling the truth when he was speaking from a much more pluralist and pro-EU position. Natasha, what have you unearthed?
James, I mean, just from speaking to people in the last sort of half an hour or so, it doesn't sound like Reform, it doesn't sound like the Tories, it doesn't sound like Robert Jenrick knew that this was coming today, that knew that Kemi Badenoch knew about whatever it was he was up to. And obviously we've not heard from him. Team Jenrick not picking up the phone. Nobody who works for him at the moment is responding to messages. He's not tweeted. He's not put anything out on social media. So I am told, however, that when the Tories spoke to him this morning, he denied it. He protested his innocence.
Really?
So
they must have. I mean, well, I wonder if we come back to that question I asked you. Is there any chance they've got it wrong?
They've got it wrong. I mean, the only thing I can think, if they did, God, that would be crazy. But look, I think there's only 2 reasons. Come on, James. There's only 2 reasons why you're meeting with a rival political leader, such as Nigel Farage. Either you're going to defect, or you're trying to do some sort of secret back deal. Let's have a merger of our parties. So obviously that's the only thing that I can think of that would really justify you meeting.
And Farage could have denied it as well. Absolute piffle. I mean, obviously
it's totally not. But you heard from his answer there how much on the back foot he was. I don't think he expected this to be revealed in the way that Kemi Badenoch has tried to steal a march today by sacking Robert Jenrick all out. There's also some discussion. Someone has told me that they had found a resignation speech from Robert Jenrick. Now that really is, you can't really ask for more proof, can you? He's meeting with Nigel Farage and they've found documents.
Is anybody that stupid? That you'd leave, of all the things you wouldn't leave lying around to be stumbled upon and discovered, surely a resignation speech would be up there with tractor porn.
I mean, maybe it was not labelled, I will resign.
What if it was planted? What if they've fallen for a I don't know, a ruse, a jape, a prank?
Anything's possible in British politics, but I think that seems to be the irrefutable evidence that Kemi Badenoch has been dished out. Whether it's come from someone within her party is quite clear.
Any chance of a by-election
with Robert Jenrick? No, of course not.
But he hasn't got the whip. Will he now? What do you know what I'd do if I was Nigel Farage? I'd say nah. You're all right, mate. We've had the PR boost. We've got the headlines. We don't actually need you. I stand by everything I said about you when I was calling you names and being rude about you and your period of minister.
If you're going to take Nadine Zahawi, but you're not going to take Robert, is that the Is that the line?
Well, I don't know. Would Nadine Zahar be
line?
planning to defect have been a very big story?
I think it probably would have reached itself to some newspapers, I think.
Yeah.
One other thing I wanted to share with you, there's been some YouGov research that they've just popped out, obviously, in light of this news. As Robert Jenrick is sacked by Kemi Badenoch, our most recent favourability figures for the former Shadow Justice Secretary show that those intending to vote Reform UK are as likely to have a favourable opinion of Robert Jenrick, so that's 30%, as Conservative supporters. So he is more popular with Reform supporters just than he is with Conservative supporters. That shows you all I think you need to know about whether he has made this decision. The question is now, what is Robert Jenrick going to say? And look, I don't see why, how you can't possibly, if you're Robert Jenrick, what do you do now, right? You've really been stumped, and you really have no choice but to walk away if indeed that was what you were doing. I don't think he can protest his innocence if he comes to face the media, to face the cameras.
Well, unless he is innocent and can prove it. But I really resent the fact that I've been rendered interested in what
I think
Robert
you love it.
Jenrick and I do love it. But
we all love the drama.
Yeah, well, I don't know that the average punter does, but anyway, that's enough of that. I will allow you to interrupt Mystery Hour if anything else happens in the course. That's an incredible honour, Natasha. I hope you are suitably conscious of what that represents. Just for mischief value, if I was Farage, I'd say, nah, you're all right, mate. I don't need you now.
He's already said I'll buy him a pint if I see him today.
Okay, 1 minute after 12 is the time, and Mystery Hour is next.
James O'Brien on LBC.
Oh, what was the mystery? Crikey, we've done plenty of mysteries this week, but now we do the actual mysteries, the real mysteries, the riddles, the conundrums. The things that must have easy answers, or not even easy answers, but the things must have solutions, but you're dashed if you can work out what they are. 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need to book your place on the board to ask your question. And it can be serious or silly, it can be scientific or whimsical. It's just something that has occurred to you or yours and made you go, I wonder why we do that. I wonder what that is. Where does that come from? How come? I know who I'll ask. I'll get James to ask his massive army of genius listeners, and one of them will know the answer. And of course, if you are that person who knows the answer to the question that you've heard somebody else ask, 0345 6060 973 is also the number that you need. I've got some phone lines free. It often happens when we have a slightly what's the word I want? Untraditional previous hour. So the run up there to that 12 o'clock junction was me talking with Natasha as opposed to me taking calls. And for some reason that I don't understand, it always puts back the Mystery Hour switchboard by about 2 to 3 minutes. So you've got a 2 to 3 minutes longer chance to get on the board than you would have ordinarily. Well, that'll be over by the time I've finished talking, but nonetheless, it's always worth pointing out. And then, of course, if you can't get through, then just use redial judiciously in the course of the next hour or so, because you don't have to wait. But some people ring in, tell Eleanor the question, or tell Rebecca the question, or tell Amelia the question. Our team is growing now because our switchboard is so busy. Keith's still here, don't panic. And they are politely told that their question is a bit rubbish. And, of course, if we're very, very busy, they are impolitely told that their question. And if they argue, then they'll be banned for life. So there you go. Reasons galore to get your own question on the board. And if that weren't enough, there's a prize. I'll say that again. There's a prize, an actual prize for my favourite contributor of the week. You get a Mystery Hour game, and the brand new travel edition is what I would go for, because you can keep it in your pocket. It's in a tin. It's proper funny. Some of the answers provided on the cards that are incorrect will make you laugh out loud, in much the same way that Mystery Hour itself makes you laugh out loud between 12 and 1 every Thursday, every week, without fail, except when it's not on. I think that's all. Oh, no, hang on. Terms and conditions at lbc.co.uk, because this is a proper competition with a proper prize on a proper radio programme presented by a proper presenter. And if you want to find out more about the game, there are two Mystery Hour games, one sort of tabletop and one pocket-sized. You can go to mysteryhour.co.uk. What a time to be alive! 7 minutes after 12. Alistair is in Chester. Alistair, question or answer?
Hi, James. I've got a question for you.
Carry on.
My girlfriend's going to be really jealous I've got through, by the way. We're both big fans of the show. Well, I should say fiancé, actually. But I've got a question, and it could come across as quite trivial, but it's been bugging me for ages.
Mystery Hour, mate. There's no such thing as too trivial. Yes.
Is 750ml.
It is.
As standard.
Yes.
Okay. A small glass is 125ml. a large glass is 250 ml.
Yeah.
They both give you 3 glasses and 6 glasses per bottle equally.
Yeah.
A medium glass is 175 ml.
Yeah.
Which, if you times that by 4, gives you 700 ml. So there's always a bit left over in the bottle. And I just wondered why it's not split equally. So why is it not 187.5 ml, which is equal distance between a small and a large glass?
I think you've almost answered the question. I don't know why I'm trying to answer this. I haven't got a Scooby-Doo.
Go on.
Well, we can picture it.
Why?
Because it's a nice
round number.
Yeah, it's a nice, easy number. You got 250, 125, 175, 187 and a half. What's that all about?
Okay, how big's a pint?
What?
How many mil is a pint?
About that big. This is for the people catching up with the show on YouTube later.
Do you know what? It might be just because it's a nice easy number, but a pint is 568 mil. Why don't we just round that down to 550 so people know it's a?
But that's
easy
metric
number.
Versus imperial, isn't it? That's a different point, I think.
Probably.
Because we were buying pints before we went metric, and it would have been, Nigel Farage would have been Prime Minister 20 years ago if they'd abolished the pint.
But I just don't understand, because no one ever goes in and says, give me a 175, or very rarely. They'll say, I'll have a medium glass. So
Well, no one ever says, I'll have a 250 either, actually.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know that there will be an answer, but it is.
There might not be.
It's so the gap is the leap from the medium to large is 75 mils, and the leap from the small to medium is only 50 mils. So it's a bit unfair, really. I don't know if they're usually priced accordingly, but it should be somewhere closer to the midway between 125 and 250. Which, as you say, would be around about 187 and a half. I really like the question, and I'm a weird person, and so are you, so I could actually talk about it for quite a long time.
Thank you.
But you're welcome.
And we've got an hour to solve it.
Exactly that, but I don't know if there will actually be a solution.
Maybe not. I just think, particularly when you get into nicer bottles of wine, you're losing 50 mil every single time if you've not got any others to sell. So I just wonder, why do we not just make it equal distance? Easier for everyone.
The fancy restaurants sometimes don't offer the 250. I don't know if you found this, or not even fancy, but one of my local restaurants, which is had an absolutely beautiful plate of spaghetti there the other night, and they don't go higher than 175. It's 125 or 175. I don't know why I told you that. I don't know why I told you that. That was a bit Alan Partridge, really, wasn't it? I was just reminiscing about the mussel spaghetti at Rotora in Brentford, which was just one of the nicest plates of pasta that I've ever had in my life. 11 minutes after 12 is the time. I've got 3 Italian restaurants in Brentford, and we circulate between them because we love them all, and they all offer slightly different. What would you call it? Offers. They're all slightly different. One is a very old school trattoria. One is ex-MasterChef contestant who did brilliantly on the programme and has now opened her own restaurant with her twin sister. And one is Siracusa, is a sort of more of a trendy, funky Italian place with a traditional-ish menu, but with a few exciting twists. So three Italian restaurants in a relatively small town of Brentford, all offering something slightly different and all brilliant if you ever find yourself in that part of West London, or if you're in town to watch your team play at Brentford. I'd recommend all 3 of those restaurants. 12 after 12 is the time. Chris is in Hemel Hempstead. Chris, question or answer?
It's a question, please, James.
Carry on, Chris.
So when I was at school, I remember learning in physics that 0 Kelvin is the absolute coldest temperature something can be, and it can't be any colder. I was
absolute zero, do they call it?
Absolute zero, yeah. So I was wondering is there a point, like an absolute hottest temperature that nothing can be hotter than, that you can't get above?
How would we know?
Well, I don't know. I was hoping that you've got some kind of physicist that might that might have an answer.
Physicist. I mean, it might be a very stupid. No offence, because it might be a brilliant question, but it might be a very stupid question. That are we aware of that risk?
I'm well aware of that risk.
Because I'm just kind of thinking that if I showed you something really, really hot, and you could just say leave it in for a bit longer, and it would get even hot. I don't know. All right. So is there an absolute maximum heat in the way that there's an absolute zero? cold. Someone will know. Someone will have a response to this. Whether or not it turns out to be an answer, we will have to wait and see, Chris.
Well, yes, I'm keen to hear what anyone has to say.
Lovely stuff. 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. If you've got an answer to that question, or indeed Alistair's question about wine. I don't normally interrupt Mystery Hour, but I will do because of the breaking news regarding Honest Bob Jenrick's defection to Farage's outfit. I'm going to play you a little clip of Farage. Do you think this was from August of 2025, as in practically yesterday, or August of 2020, or August of 2015? A little multiple choice for you.
You might have seen pictures of Robert Jenrick turning up outside the Bell Hotel, the migrant hotel in Epping, in Essex. And what he's saying is, I'm on your side. I'm with you, the people. What's going on is a disgrace. Well, when he was immigration minister just a couple of years back, it was very, very different. Here he is boasting that he's going to open more migrant hotels than all the ministers that went before him.
We have procured more hotels very rapidly, and more are coming on board literally every day. More hotels have been coming online almost every month throughout the whole of this year. So Suella Braverman and her predecessor, Priti Patel, were procuring more hotels. What I have done in my short tenure is ramp that up and procure even more.
Yes, that was Robert Jenrick, and under him, as immigration minister, we got up to 56,000 people who'd crossed the Channel by boat living in hotels. He put more people in hotels than even this Labour government. And here we are, 3 years later, and he turns up and says, I'm on your side. My advice to you would be to say, this man is a fraud, this man is not to be trusted, and certainly his party aren't.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It's 12:16. Graham's been in touch. He says, your multiple choice is sort of falling apart here, James. Did you not listen to the clip before you played it? Graham, it's just a bit of fun, mate. And honestly, it was Nigel Farage fans who I wanted to answer that question. So for them, it would have been very hard to work out when Farage was talking about Jenrick. It was, of course, in August of 2025. So he's gone in the space of 6 months from being a complete and unutterable fraud to being the next big signing for Reform UK. Back to Mystery Hour. Joe's in Kingston. Joe, question or answer?
Question, please, James.
Carry on, Joe.
Oh, and happy birthday for Tuesday, by
Thank you very much.
So I live in lovely Kingston, right next to Richmond Park. I take my dog for walks in the park, and we watch the deer. We have to keep her away from the deer. My question is, why don't the deer leave? Because there are no cattle grids on any of the gates. I've seen one cattle grid into like a backstage area, but there's no cattle grids on the gate, so they could just stroll out if they wanted to, but they don't.
I really like that question. Are they they're frightened of Fenton?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's why we have to keep our dog on the lead in case she does offend.
How do you know they don't leave? Because you live locally, and if there was a deer on the loose, we'd hear about it.
Oh, yeah. And one of the gates is very near us, and they could just wander out into a bit of wood. So I think somebody would notice if there was a few deer wandering around.
Are we sure that there are no... I mean, I know Richmond Park quite well, actually, so I can probably answer these questions myself. There aren't any cattle grids elsewhere. It's not as if there's a circle in which the deers operate that is actually, if you like, demarcated with cattle grids, because they could get onto the road, they could walk up the road and walk. Are you sure there aren't more? Because in my head I'd have just presumed there were more cattle grids.
Nope, they can. We saw a lovely herd racing across a hill near Hamgate at the weekend, and they could have just run straight out, but they didn't. They just went back up the hill.
Fantastic. So why don't the deer leave?
Yeah.
Maybe they don't want to. Maybe they're happy.
Maybe they're just happy where they are.
Could we get fed, do they? I mean, I don't know. Well, they get cold. You'd think the coal might send them herring off for running for the hills.
Yeah. I mean, maybe they just go outside and go, oh, no, there's too many cars. Don't like the traffic.
Could be that we need... I mean, I don't know what you call a deer expert, do you?
No.
I don't even know what the Latin word for a deer is. It'll come to me. Thank you, Joe. I love that question. And it's not specific to Richmond Park. You could have any sort of rural landscape, any park. There you go. That's the word I was looking for. You could have any massive park, what's got deer in it, and doesn't have every exit protected by a cattle grid. Why don't the deer leave? Neil's in Wokingham. Neil, question or answer?
Question, please, James.
Carry on.
I am wondering, is there any physiological explanation as to when somebody says you could cut the atmosphere with a knife?
Physiological?
Yeah,
No.
there's something that's going on. Well, let me explain.
Go on then.
So, my grandmother, she's blind.
Yes.
And before any type of conversation or movement or whatever happens in a room, if there is something hanging in the air, she will pick up on it before anyone said a word. So how is that possible without there being some type of, I don't know, pheromones
okay.
or
You threw
something?
me a bit with physiological because you almost mean psychic.
No,
But we don't believe in psychic,
no.
so it must be physiological. It's like the sense of being stared at.
Correct, yeah.
Do you know, I have a political anecdote I can share at this point. Neil?
Is it to do with Robert Jenrick?
No, God forbid. I wouldn't mention
gosh.
that man's name on this programme. It's to do with Angela Rayner, an altogether different proposition. She told me on full disclosure that she can tell when a fight is about to kick off. She has a sort of sixth sense, which is what we're talking about in your
Same thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in your grandmother's case. So what would it be? And it's in a silent... Because if someone says, I'm going to punch you in the face, then you don't really deserve any credit for predicting a fight.
No, agreed.
But your grandmother would just know that the atmosphere that she couldn't see and there was nothing to hear, that the atmosphere was tense.
Correct. That's exactly it.
I love that question. Again, I'd be amazed if we get an answer, but I hope we do. I mean, what is going on when somebody can sense an atmosphere? 0345 6060 973. I think I've got, some names stick in your head. When I first arrived at LBC 273 years ago, and I had quite a big tax bill to pay, so I was taking every shift they offered me. And it was during a period of ownership change, so they were getting rid of the old guard of presenters, and they hadn't hired the new guard. So it was quite a lot of work for a young whippersnapper like me to hoover up. And we used to do weekend shows that were very, you'd have a gardening expert on and a financial, and you'd just have lots of authors had been booked. I guess because the phones didn't ring, because there weren't enough people listening. But I always remember one guy called Rupert Sheldrake, and the book was called The Sense of Being Stared At. And that was about the kind of thing that Neil is talking about, although I don't know what traditional science would make of that idea of a sense, a sixth sense. Brian's in Wigan. Brian, question or answer?
Question, please, James.
Carry on, Brian.
Why is it incorrect etiquette to have your elbows on the table when you're dining?
Oh, I know this. I know this.
Could I have the answer, please?
Do you want? Yeah. The reason is naval, Brian.
That's not the answer I have, but I'm satisfied with your answer.
No, I mean that's not the answer. I mean that is it's the theme. It has a naval theme. The answer.
I think stirring at or
what?
I think contemplating your navel or the seafaring navel.
The seafaring navel.
Okay.
So what it is because when you were on board ship and it was time for dinner, the dinner would be served on trestle tables that were put away the rest of the time. And obviously if you're eating on a trestle table and you put your elbows on the table, the whole thing could go up in the air. So it was frowned upon to put your elbows on the table, and it migrated from sea and marine environments into domestic environments. And probably, I mean, it may well have been that if you were having a dinner in a big Saxon hall, the table wasn't necessarily there all the time. They just pull it out at dinner time. And so if it's not a permanent table, putting your elbows on it runs a very real risk of upsetting the whole shebang.
I feel adequately answered. Give yourself a round of applause.
Thank you very much, Brian. I shall. There we go. I like that one. I think it's in the board game, actually. James is in Southampton. Oh, we better listen to the Prime Minister reacting to the... Oh, God. I've already lost the will to live. Here's Keir Starmer reacting to the news that Kemi Badenoch has sacked honest Bob Jenrick.
My question is, why did it take so long? Jenrick's been making toxic comments to try and divide our country for months and months and months. And it's only now, when he's on the verge of defecting to Reform, that Badenoch gets round to sacking him. So that's weakness on her part. There's a bigger story here, because we're seeing a flood of Tory politicians, ex-politicians, politicians going across to Reform because they know that the Tory party is a sinking ship. Equally, from Reform's point of view, you've got Nigel Farage, who is welcoming these failed politicians into his ranks and building his party as a party of the politicians, Tory politicians, who let the country down so badly.
25 minutes after 12 is the time. He's had his Weetabix this week, hasn't he? I'm going to give you a round of I'm going to give you a round of applause for this. I was wondering earlier what a deer expert is called, and Ian's been in touch to say a deer expert, I believe, is known as an aficionado. Very strong, yes. Scott has come up with Dearus Maximus as a suggestion for what the Latin word is. That does not get a round of applause. Frankly, it should probably get arrested. James is in Southampton. James, question or answer?
Question. Strange enough, when you were talking to a lad from Macclesfield earlier in the show and posing about the FA Cup.
Yes.
It reminded me of my very first question to Mr. Howe, which was on your 50th birthday, ahead of the Kidderminster versus West Ham game. Oh. And I wished them luck, but sadly it did not pay off.
Well, we did pretty well, but we didn't get the result that Macclesfield got the other night.
Anyway, so
go on.
Roughly my third anniversary, my third question. It was also a sports question that year. It's a sports question today. So I'm questioning what the logic is in terms of when a football team chooses to not wear their first choice kit. So, for example, I was watching Manchester City play Chelsea the other day, and they were both playing in their first choice blue kit. Different shades, but still what you'd probably go as a colour clash.
Yeah.
Conversely, like Everton, when I saw Everton play Wolves, blue versus orange, or gold if you want to be pedantic, they both played in the same, the first choice shirts. But when Man United played Wolves a few days later, Wolves put a different shirt on. I was like, well, there's no clash between... So
it looks like there's no hard and fast rule then, is what you're suggesting?
Yeah, so I'm like, where is the logic, or is there some kind of... Why do they choose to make it up as they go along?
I like that question. I've got a feeling referees always have a little bit more power off the pitch than we realise. It may be the referee. I don't know, but no, because it would have to be decided before you got on the coach, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Which kit you bring? Although I do famously remember Man United having a very what they classed to be an unlucky grey kit back in the mid-90s.
Yeah, I remember that.
And they actually changed at half time when 3-0 down to Southampton at the old Dell. Came out in the blue and white strip for the second half, but obviously neither of which classed with Southampton. But,
well, I don't know. So, what is the criteria? I've got a football referee who he's an ice cream salesman by day, and a football referee by night, or not by night, obviously by weekends. But I don't know if he's listening at the moment. He drops off ice cream in the West End for all the big theatres, and I often stop for a chat with him, Ian. He'll know, but whether or not he's going to ring into Mr. Howe or is indeed listening to this one, I do not know. So who decides? How is it decided when a team is going to wear its away kit? Because it is not always the case that they wear it when they're away, or even, as James has reminded us, the case that they wear it when there is a perceived colour clash. Jacob is in Witney in Oxfordshire. Jacob, question or answer?
Answer.
Carry on.
Yes, I'm answering the question about the theoretical hottest temperature that something could reach.
Go on.
Yeah, so there is a temperature called the Planck temperature, which is the highest temperature that our current understanding of physics could possibly describe. Wow. A system at that temperature would be expected to continuously form microscopic black holes, and essentially, as you move up the energy scale, we have to use different physical theories to describe what's going on. Like at low energies, Newtonian mechanics, which we learned in school, is fine. Higher energies, you have to use quantum mechanics. And then when you go to the highest energies, we're talking 10 to the power of 33 Kelvin.
Yes.
1 followed by 32 zeros Kelvin. At those temperatures, we expect that quantum gravity is the dominant physical theory, and we basically don't have a good picture of quantum gravity, and so it's impossible for us to say anything about what happens at those kind of temperatures.
So I'm going to ask a question now, and your very kind belief that I would be able to understand what you've just explained is going to fall apart like a cheap suit. So it would be impossible to talk about this in terms of numbers.
We can talk about that limit in terms of numbers. Like we can say at that kind of temperature, things would be happening on timescales of about 10 to the power of minus 43 seconds. But if you want to go hotter than that, or you want to actually describe what's happening there, we don't have the ability to do so.
That's
because quantum gravity is something. Yeah, quantum gravity we don't understand. And basically, all of the particles would collide with so much energy, it would create black holes every time that happened.
And it's Max Planck. Max Planck, presumably, is it named after?
Exactly.
Max Planck. So Planck with a C. Planck. Wow, I didn't think we'd get an answer to that. It's fantastic. The Planck temperature is what Chris was looking for. What are your qualifications, Jacob?
I just finished my PhD in high energy physics last year.
How did you get on?
I got on pretty well. It was in Naples, in Italy. I had a good time, and
oh wow,
it was good.
So you're a doctor now?
Yeah, I'm a doctor now. Yeah, not the useful type.
Well, you say that. Do you know what you're going to do with your? I'm being very nosy. We can go straight to the news if you want.
Sure. I wanted. No, I mean, I always wanted to do physics, and I'm very lucky because I'm doing physics. I work for a startup company, and I'm doing plasma physics.
How exciting. Just have a round of applause, Jacob, and congratulations on your PhD. It occurred to me halfway through talking to Jacob then about what he was going to do with his PhD in high energy physics that I sometimes say, well, stay on the line because there might be somebody out there who's looking for somebody who's got your skills. And I thought I won't do that with Jacob. I didn't need to. Anyway, Dominic Ellis is here with your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
34 is the time. Interesting that Starmer made the point there that I shared with you earlier via Stephen Bush of the Financial Times, that if people are going to start talking a bit about how Kemi Badenoch looks so strong, she doesn't. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I think she looks pretty good today in the style and the delivery of getting rid of Robert Jenrick. But if you stop to think about it, she has absolutely no choice. If they've stumbled across irrefutable evidence that he's planning to defect, of course you're going to fire him. It's beyond a no-brainer. Starmer pointing out that she should have sacked him sooner for the obvious racism, and the best precedent for that is Enoch Powell. It's Ted Heath, I think, who just got rid of Enoch Powell because he crossed the line. Badenoch, unfortunately, has presided over a Tory party full of people who now dance along the line, which makes the defections to the party, or at least the party leader that is openly and obviously racist and always has been, more likely to happen, not less likely. It's as if she has, I don't know what the best way of describing it would be. It's as if that cloak of respectability that the Tories used to wear, some of whom to mask their lack of respectability, some of whom because they were respectable. It's as if that's gone. So he won't be the last. 12:35 is the time. That's probably the last political comment, I think, because we don't like interrupting Mystery Hour with the real world. Spencer is in County Antrim. Spencer, question or answer?
Hey, James, question, please, sir.
Carry on, sir.
So it's a bit lowbrow compared to the quantum mechanics.
Yeah, but it wasn't a very highbrow question, was it?
Not an answer.
But it was a highbrow answer. So you never know. You might get a highbrow answer to your question.
You never know, mate. This is sort of in the context of your show last week when we talked about the rise in cost of vet bills and that kind of thing.
Yes.
So what I want to know is, in light of all that, do dogs live longer? And if so, by how much these days?
From shall we say 25 years ago?
Well, I'm 53, mate, sharing the same sort of carbon data as you. So I remember dogs as a kid. They ate what came off the table. They ran about. They got wormed occasionally. They didn't see a vet until it was time to, go to the upper room, shall we say?
Yes.
Whereas my dog, he has a pet club. He gets his hypoallergenic shampoo, his pedicures, his toothpaste. And I'm just curious, for all that money we put into our pets, do you think they live longer, mate, than they would have done? Well, I'm talking about late 70s, 80s when you and me were knocking about.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, somewhat, but I presume that we keep track of this sort of thing. But they must do, mustn't they? Otherwise, this is the greatest con in history. We're all paying thousands and thousands of pounds in bet bills, and dogs' life expectancy hasn't gone up at all. It would be like the mother of all unveilings. So we just need detail. We need somebody to provide us with the actual numbers. I suppose it's a great question as well. No one's added that to the coverage. You'd have thought when we were reading all these stories about rocketing vet bills, somebody would have asked the question Spencer has asked and gone, of course, it must be remembered that compared to 25 years ago, dogs now live 24% longer, for example. I don't know. Do you? If you do, you know what to do. David is in Norwich. David, question or answer?
It's an answer, James.
Carry on, David.
Football shirts, about what colours are worn. Quite regularly, and it's more than regularly, really, it's a commercial decision.
Really?
Your club will have 3 shirts in general. Some have 5 in a season. To get the money back and make people buy those shirts, you need to wear them. So if you've got a situation where there might be a slight colour, or even if there's no colour, sort of colour clash, you get the commercial department will contact the kit manager and say, do you mind wearing the 3rd shirt? Is it okay if we wear the 3rd shirt on Saturday?
It has to be cleared with the ref, does it, or not?
It is cleared with the ref beforehand. The only times you majorly get problems is goalkeeper shirts. If, say, a goalkeeper's wearing a yellow shirt, because the goalkeepers will have 3 different shirts as well.
Yes.
And say you're playing Watford, Norwich, Hull, there's a chance of a clash there.
Of course. Norwich in yellow,
Yeah, and over why teams like Norwich need 3 shirts is beyond me, but, money. And occasionally the kit man or the manager will turn around and say, look, we won the last 3 years we've been to this club by wearing our away kit. Our away kit doesn't clash. We're wearing this colour for superstition.
I love it. Qualifications?
Used to be a kit man, still very friendly with a lot of kit men in football.
Who were you kit man for?
I told you before, and it ended up very nastily when I spoke to you about kits before. At a certain club, I was let go when I was very ill, and I don't want to give them any.
No, forget it. Do you know? I had a bit. Not deja vu exactly, but I just had a little thing. I think I've asked David this question before, but I don't think it was like I knew that it went a bit sour. I had that sense memory almost, so I'm glad I didn't do that.
If we ever meet in person, I'll let you know everything.
You'll give me the details. Do you know? I bet you do, but I only discovered it relatively recently, and I shared some of this last week on the programme, and I surprised another caller from Norwich with the news that the city was the 2nd biggest in England at the turn of the 17th century. Do you know why Norwich are known as the Canaries?
Yes, I do, but I couldn't recall it off the top of my head. I did know about the size of the city as well, yep.
Refugees.
Oh, yeah, the strangers, as they're called.
The Flemish and Dutch refugees brought canaries with them when they came to Norwich in the 16th century to work in the textile, or to set up the textile industry. That's right, known as the strangers.
Indeed.
And so there you go, even that. So when all these people think that immigration is a modern invention, or there you go, the name of one of the great football clubs. The nickname is based upon refugee heritage. David, round of applause. Lovely stuff. In fact, I mean, everyone's got so excited about Macclesfield this week, getting that result against Crystal Palace. I feel that Kidderminster Harriers' extraordinary victory, 6-1 victory over Morecambe, or Morecambe, as regular listeners will know it, in the FA Trophy has gone completely unnoticed. Not only did the Kidderminster team beat Morecambe 6-1, we started the game without a striker. Everybody was getting ready to give the manager a right old coating, who just picked up Manager of the Month, actually, so fair play to him. We started a game without a striker, and we scored 6 goals. What's the most interesting thing that I could say now? What would be the most interesting punchline to that little anecdote? We started the game without a striker, we scored 6 goals, and... ... What would be the most interesting thing I could say? For people who know a little bit about football, it's not about the numbers. Eleanor thinks it's 2 hat-tricks. That would not be an interesting thing to say, would it? We scored 6 goals with no strikers. What's the most interesting thing I could say next? If anybody gets it right, well, you might know, although it's unlikely, given that it's a Kidderminster-based story. I'll give you the money myself. Jenny's in Lowestoft. Jenny, question or answer?
Hi, James. Question, please.
Staying in East Anglia. What is it?
Indeed. My question is about chocolate fudge brownie ice cream.
Oh, yes.
Why are the fudge brownie pieces not completely frozen solid? When you open the ice cream, they're nice and soft and gooey, and you can just eat them straight away. You don't have to wait for them
I mean, presumably it's oil, is it? I mean, it's not going to be nice. It's going to be an ultra-processed thing, isn't it?
Oh, no.
I think it is.
Probably.
You would expect them to be frozen solid, like chocolate chips are in ice cream. Why aren't fudge brownies? Is there anything else like that? Cookie dough comes out a bit soft, doesn't it, as well? Oreos?
I'm not sure.
You never have cookie dough? You've never had cookie dough?
I have, but a long time ago. I can't remember.
All right, you're on. I quite like that. Why are the bits in lots of fancy ice creams not actually frozen solid? But I think the answer is going to be, this is a nice word, I think the answer is going to be unappetising, actually, because that's often the way with what you might call food technology. Thank you, Jenny. A couple of phone lines free. It's only 12:43. You've got time to provide answers to some questions already on the board, but I tell you what, you've probably got time to get your own question on the board as well. Why does a medium glass of wine, according to pub and restaurant measures, defy all the laws of logic? You go from 125 small, 150, 250 large, but medium is 175. What's that all about? We've done the maximum heat. Why don't deer escape from parks, particularly Richmond Park, where there are very few cattle grids, but the deer never seem to go AWOL? Congratulations to everybody who has responded to that question with the answer, no idea. We've done the knife. No, we haven't. Have we done the atmosphere? No, you can't. How can people know that they're in an atmosphere? People can sense. Angela Rayner says she can sense in a room when there's a fight about to start. Neil, who asked the question, his grandmother was blind, but she would know if there was a tense atmosphere in a room. How does that even happen? The dogs question that Spencer asked, are they living longer than they did before we all started spending £1 million a year on vets bills? Jenny's fudge brownie question you just heard. And what was James's question? I've written down away. Why have I written down away? Oh, the football kits. We've done that one as well, haven't we? So nice one. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, it could be you.
James O'Brien on LBC.
47 is the time. Mike got it. A few people got it right. That Kidderminster Harriers question that I teased you with a moment ago. Adam Murray's Red Army on a storming run at the moment, which we've almost certainly jinxed by drawing attention to it on national radio. So we beat Morecambe 6-1. We had no strikers in our starting 11. What would be the most interesting thing I could say next in footballing trivia terms? And Mike got it absolutely right. No player scored twice. All 6 goals scored by different players, and we scored 6 with no strikers. It's magnificent, isn't it? Here's another little quiz for you. When I said a moment ago, towards the end of the last hour, I said, who was the fourth member of the Gang of Four? It was Roy Jenkins, Shirley Williams, David Owen, and I always forget who the fourth one was. 2 fellow LBC presenters replied with the correct answer to my phone, not to the studio. I wouldn't necessarily have seen it if they had. Do you want to have a guess? One is quite easy for reasons that are quite obvious. Do you want to have a guess at which 2 LBC colleagues both got in touch, both texted me to say, it was Bill Rogers. It was Bill Rogers. 12:49 is the time. Back to mystery. Jemima is in High Barnet. Jemima, question or answer?
Answer, please.
Carry on.
It's an answer to the question about being able to feel tension in the environment, having a sixth sense.
Go on.
I think it's something that can be explained by the concept of neuroception, which is the nervous system's unconscious scanning for things like emotional shifts, relational threats, things like that. And I know that people who are very vigilant, often they've had childhood trauma, they are really attuned.
Yeah, that was probably Angela Rayner's experience, actually. I think that's what she was telling me, in full disclosure.
Right, quite possibly. Like, they're really attuned to things like tone, pauses, things like that. And maybe that's also the case for some blind people, where there's a heightened sense, because it keeps them safe in the same way that a child who has had to attune like that, it would keep them safe.
What a lovely answer. I mean, I mean, crikey, every day's a school day, but as I get older, I think I've taken by surprise more when I'm introduced to something I've never heard of before. The word, let alone the theory, neuroception. Is it a proper thing? Is it a proper scientific thing, or is it a theory?
It's part of the polyvagal theory, and it's Stephen Porges' theory. Yeah,
I love that. Qualifications?
I'm a psychotherapist.
I thought so.
Trained in somatic and polyvagal approaches.
Yes, I love that. Have a round of applause, Jemima. Thank you. I'm reading a bit of Winnicott at the moment.
Oh, amazing.
He's pretty good, isn't he?
Yeah, I like it.
10-1 is the time. There you go. You live and learn. I did not know about that. It's a polyvagal theory for pain, chronic pain and symptoms. Anyway, that's a conversation for another day. No, a lot of incorrect answers. This is quite fun. Wondering which colleagues would have known or got in touch. So Ian Dale and Nick Abbott, says David. Lewis Goodall and Nick Abbott, says Paul. Lewis Goodall and Ben Kentish, says Chris. Ian Dale and Nick Abbott. Ian Dale and Rachel Johnson, says Davey. Ian Dale and Nick Abbott, says Jason. Lewis Goodall is a right nerd, says Mike. Ian Dale and Clive Bull. No, Sheila's in the office. Of course Sheila's going to be one of them. She's literally upstairs. She's probably downstairs now. It's nearly time for her show. And the other is Lewis Goodall. So Lewis Goodall and Sheila Fogarty getting in touch with the Bill Rogers answer to that question. John's in Chelmsford. John, question or answer?
Answer.
Carry on.
It's about the wine glasses.
Oh, yeah.
It's historical, really. It's only relatively recently, in the last 30 or 40 years, that we've had set sizes for wine glasses in pubs and restaurants.
You just have a pour previously, as it were.
Yeah, we just have a glass of wine.
Yeah.
So a lot of pubs actually would do a 150 glass. When I was doing a lot of pub work,
really?
That's what you had. Yeah. So it would be a 150 milliliter glass of wine. When government was looking at wine glass sizes, they said, well, we better have two different sizes, because that's what we have for gin, rum, vodka and whiskey. That's 25 mil or 35 mil. So they looked at the wine and said, 125 or 175. They thought 175 would be a large glass of wine back in the day.
Yeah. Well, it is. It's a perfectly reasonable.
By the bottle. And it's multiples of. So 125 mil or 175 mil or multiples of either of those, which is why the 250 mil is simply a multiple of 125. You could, in theory, have a 350 milliliter glass of wine.
It wouldn't really be a glass. I mean, that would be one of my dad jokes, actually, with large glasses of wine, is I always say someone's nicked your goldfish, but it would really look likely on a 350 ml. Well, qualifications, John. Great answer.
I'm a trading standards officer and inspector of weights and measures.
Well, that'll do nicely. Round of applause for you.
Thank you.
No, thank you. 6-2 we beat Morgan. Did I say 6-1? God, flipping heck. I'll take away my VIP status at Kidderminster football, Kidderminster Harriers with that little faux pas. 6-2 we beat Morecambe, but the other bit was all true. John's in Masham. John, question or answer?
That's an answer, please, James.
Carry on, John.
Right.
What?
Sweet chunks in ice cream, why they don't freeze.
Yes. Did you forget then, or were you overcome by nerves?
A bit of both.
Oh, it's all right. It's only ice cream. What's the worst that can happen?
Basically, the higher the sugar content in something, the more it acts as a natural antifreeze. So something like your fudge will be softer than, say,
really?
Like a little piece of chocolate or a piece of brownie or something like that, because it will have a natural high. That's why you get root vegetables in winter.
Yeah.
They become sweeter because they convert their starches into sugars so that they don't freeze.
Absolutely fascinating. So if you're making an ice cream with bits of brownie in it, you'd probably up the sugar content from what you'd have in a brownie that you were serving as a normal brownie.
If you wanted them to be softer, yeah.
Yeah, well, you'd need them. Well, because you don't want them to freeze solid. Qualifications?
Chef.
We've been here before, haven't we?
We have, yeah.
And you make your own ice cream?
We do. We make everything in-house from
and it's all locally foraged as well, isn't it? Isn't it all locally sourced?
Foraged, smoked, pickled, everything.
So you get local milk from a local farmer?
That
cream?
one's slightly debatable, but it's within Yorkshire, yeah.
Okay, and then what flavours do you do? Give me a flavour that will make everybody listening go, "Oh, blimey, ice cream!"
All right. So this week we have a orange tart, which we serve with burnt toast ice cream.
Oh, I bet that's delicious.
It's banging.
I bet that's delicious because first time I had brown bread ice cream, I thought that'll be gross, and I had it, and it was actually delicious. And so that would be similar, wouldn't it? It'd be the same sort of green tea ice cream as well. Those things that are savoury, that something magical happens to them when you put them with the sugar and the cream. It's absolutely gorgeous. I bet that is delicious. What else is on the menu this week? I'm feeling quite culinary.
What have we got? We've got a celeriac soup with pear and chestnut, followed by ceviche of Cornish sea bass, followed by some grilled venison with pickled red cabbage and some fancy mushrooms from Scotland. This is at Where There's Smoke in Masham. Well remembered. I am not going to forget in a hurry. I'm going to come and see you one day. I'm going to come and... Do you know my mate... You're very welcome. You're very welcome. When I get up to Yorkshire, it's a bit off your patch, but do you know Michael at the Durham Ox in Craik? Not yet. Well, you must introduce yourself to him if you're ever in the area. He's a wonderful host and a really nice bloke as well. But I haven't been to Yorkshire for so long. I think I'm doing a gig in Leeds in October, November, so set your clock. It's an hour away. I know it is. I'll see you then. I want that burnt toast ice cream back on the menu as well. 12:56 is the time. Round of applause for John. Ed's in Teddington. Ed, question or answer?
Hello, answer.
Carry on.
Dear Richmond Park.
Yes.
I just want to prefix this by saying this is all anecdotal.
Okay, so.
Yeah. So I'm a tree surgeon and we do the trees for Richmond Park, and I've spoken to the gamekeepers there.
Yeah.
And they do get out. They can get out.
Yeah.
There's nothing stopping them. As you said, there's no cattle grids, and it's mainly because they're just scared, I guess, prefer being in the park.
Yeah. Creatures of habit.
Creatures of habit. It's a bit more alien out there. They have to generally go on the road to get out as well, or would have to go on tarmac, which is not ideal.
They don't like it on their little hooves.
They don't like it, no. But once they're out, it's possibly curtains for them because you can't really herd a deer.
Oh, can you not? You can't. They're not. They don't respond to the traditional.
No.
So yeah, like a pheasant, they're probably not going to last long out in the wild.
No. Well, the gamekeepers are called and they have to deal with it.
You mean they have to?
Yes.
What's the big job for tree surgeons at this time of year?
Bit of storm damage every now and again.
Anecdotal.
Catching up.
Yeah, sorry. I'll do the rubbish jokes around here, mate. Thank you very much. Go on, what are the big jobs for tree surgeons? What's the big job?
It's our busy time of year, so lots of street tree work going on, plane trees, repollarding. Trees are dormant, so everyone wants us to get on with it before the spring.
And is that what you should do? If you need a big branch taking down, do it now before it's full of leaves.
Yeah, ideally, yeah. And any birds come nesting as well.
I love it. Round of applause, Ed, and great work on the pun. In fact, I missed it so completely that I almost responded by saying, well, don't be ridiculous. Everything's anecdotal on Mystery Hour, but it was anecdotal about the deer. Beautiful work. Absolutely beautiful. In fact, I'd go so far, Ed, as to say that was a stag-a-ring joke. Stag-a-ring.
I thought we'd left this in 2025,
Sorry,
James.
She. Sorry,
no.
She. It's Mystery Hour. It brings out the worst in me. That is it for today. Who is the winner? Let's give the prize to the kit man. Because we triggered his trauma from his horrible experiences with his former employer. So we'll give the was it Brian who answered the question about the football shirts? David in Norwich, please. Let's give him the game. If you missed any of today's show, you can listen back on our free Global Player app or the LBC app, where you can stay up to date on the top stories and opinions, put your news categories in the order you want. You can pause and rewind live radio and listen to a range of podcasts, including James O'Brien Daily, the best bits from this show every day. Download the official LBC app for free from your app store now. Join Tom Swarbrick on LBC at 4 and join Sheila Fogarty now.
Right now. Thank you very much indeed.
James O'Brien on LBC.